Chapter 91. In the crowd, Chu Yi's eyes swept over Tan Xiu with a bit of admiration as he whispered, "Zheng Yu is right. This Tan Xiu is absolutely unfathomable." Bai Tao heavily nodded and said with a face full of approval, "That's right. I also have the same feeling now. Besides, I found that he can cause a sensation no matter where he goes. It was like that in the everlasting feast hall, and it's the same here. It seems that we have to find an opportunity to get to know him." Chu Yi's mind was outstanding. After being silent for a moment, he whispered, "I think that if we go up and recommend ourselves, he may be too lazy to care about us. If you want to make friends with a person, you must observe his face, observe his mood, and then cater to his interest. All right. Let's send someone to investigate him and see what he needs." "All right." Bai Tao agreed. Ouyang Lulu, who was in front of them, had an inconceivable expression on her face as she looked at the winner of Tan Xiu. Suddenly, she recalled something and immediately turned to look at Chu Yi and Bai Tao behind her, asking, "I suddenly remembered that you once told me about a young man. His name is the same as this Tan Xiu who participated in the gambling." Bai Tao forced a smile and said, "It's more than the same name. It's the same person." "What?" Ouyang Lulu was stunned. She never thought that the Tan Xiu in front of her was the young man that Bai Tao and Chu Yi praised endlessly. He was the one who made the gold medal manager, Kang Xia, to personally rush to Star City from the imperial capital. He was also the one that even Zheng Yu worshipped. Who was he? How could he be so powerful? Ouyang Lulu suddenly realized that this young man, who seemed to be a bit handsome, was unexpectedly full of mysterious aura. It was as if he was shrouded in a layer of fog that she couldn't see through. "How about it? Do you still want to play?" Tan Xiu looked at the dealer pushing all the chips in front of him. He immediately looked at Yi Taifu with a faint smile and said, "Play." The fierce voice was not from Yi Taifu's mouth, but from Qin Kai's angry face. Tan Xiu shrugged his shoulders and said in a relaxed manner, "But, you don't have any money. 1,000,000 chips is only the bottom line. Do you think you can play?" Qin Kai took out a jade pendant carved with a coiling dragon and phoenix pattern and shouted in a deep voice, "Having no money doesn't mean you don't have the qualifications to continue gambling. This jade pendant belonged to Jia Ruidao. The next round of gambling would be decided in a single round. If you lose, give me all the chips in front of you. If you win, I'll return this jade pendant to you." Tan Xiu looked at Jia Ruidao. He was keenly aware that the moment Qin Kai took out the jade pendant, Jia Ruidao's breathing became rapid, and his eyes became incomparably fervent. "What's your decision?" Tan Xiu looked at Jia Ruidao and asked. Jia Ruidao struggled for a long time in his heart. Finally, he clenched his teeth and made up his mind, "Let's bet." Tan Xiu nodded lightly. He looked at Qin Kai and said, "Then I'll play with you again. After this round, no matter who wins or loses, the grudges between us will be written off. What do you think?" "I agree." Qin Kai knew that Tan Xiu had an extraordinary origin and was also a cultivator. Even if Tan Xiu didn't say it, he didn't dare to provoke Tan Xiu. Therefore, his answer was very straightforward. Tan Xiu looked at the dealer, nodded and asked, "What kind of gambling tools are we going to use?" Yi Taifu, in order to adjust his mentality and regain his confidence, said with a sinking tone, "You were the winner before, so I give you the choice." With a strange expression, Tan Xiu asked, "Are you sure about this?" Yi Taifu confidently said, "Yes." Tan Xiu looked at the dealer and lightly said, "I'll have to trouble you to get a new deck of playing cards." The dealer nodded and took out a new deck of playing cards. He handed it to Tan Xiu and asked, "How do you want to play?" Tan Xiu looked at Yi Taifu and lightly said, "Gambling skills are nothing more than eyesight, hearing, and hand speed. Today, we'll learn from the god of gamblers from the TV. Let the dealer scatter the new deck of cards in the air. We'll act at the same time. Each of us will grab a card and compare the cards. In this deck of cards, the biggest is the king, and the smallest is the ace. How about it?" Yi Taifu was startled. He didn't expect that Tan Xiu wouldn't play according to common sense and would even choose this kind of gambling method. One must know that his hand speed was very fast. Needless to say, his eyesight was as sharp as an eagle's. I agree. Tan Xiu nodded and said, then, get ready. Let's begin. The dealer looked at Tan Xiu and Yi Taifu and immediately said, both of you, please come with me to the open space. I'll ask someone to draw 3 lines with the same distance on this open space. Each of us will stand on the line and I'll scatter the cards. You two will grab each other's cards. Whoever grabs the biggest card will be the winner. Good. I agree. Tan Xiu and Yi Taifu nodded at the same time. In the crowd, Chen Kai was still immersed in anger. When he heard Tan Xiu and Yi Taifu's gambling method, his heart was a bit irritated. He felt that something was wrong. But he couldn't tell what was wrong. He could only stare at Jia Ruidao and his disciple with an unkind expression. Isn't this just looking for abuse? In another direction, Miao Wentong didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he looked at Yi Taifu. His heart was full of sympathy. He didn't know about others, but he knew that Tan Xiu was an expert who could break through the 1000 Revolution Array's 6th layer. His strength was absolutely formidable. Whether it was his eyesight or his hand speed, both were fast to the extreme. A few minutes later, the dealer stood in the middle, while Tan Xiu and Yi Taifu stood on both sides. She looked at the two of them and said, both of you, I'm ready. I hope you can cheer up and win this crucial gambling game. Now, I'll start counting down from 3. After counting, I'll scatter this deck of cards in the air. 3, 2, 1, 0. The dealer swung her arm and used all of her strength to scatter the cards in her hand above her head. Humph! Before the dealer scattered the cards, Tan Xiu's divine sense had firmly locked on the king card in the deck. After the cards were scattered, he moved lightning fast. The king card had not yet risen to the top, but he had already rushed up. Almost in a flash, the king card was already in his hand, and his feet once again landed on the ground. On the other side, Yi Taifu's movements were a few beats slower than Tan Xiu's. His eyes quickly turned, looking for the position of the king card. Seeing Tan Xiu taking the initiative, his complexion abruptly changed. He hesitated for a moment because he didn't see the king card, but the little king card. Then, he flew up and snatched the little king card into his hand. His eyes continued to sweep across the cards that filled the sky. 10 seconds later, the rest of the deck of cards fell to the ground. Some were facing up, some were facing up. The dealer came back to the middle of the two and said with a smile, both of you have grabbed the cards you want. Now, I hope that both of you will show your cards at the same time. Yi Taifu didn't find the king card. Among all the cards facing up on the ground, there was no king card. His heart was a bit perturbed. Looking at the expressionless face of Tan Xiu, he secretly prayed in his heart, hoping that Tan Xiu wouldn't grab the king card. Otherwise, he would really suffer a crushing defeat. Little king. Little king. Both of them showed their cards at the same time. In a split second, Yi Taifu's heart felt like it had fallen into an ice cave. His body turned stiff like a stone. In his eyes, there was no longer perturbed, but intense disbelief and pain. In this last round of gambling, he seemed to have grasped a life-saving straw. But after he grasped it, he found that this straw not only couldn't help him, but also fiercely slapped him. What was adding fuel to the fire? What was adding fuel to the fire? This last round happened to be the perfect interpretation. Wow, the atmosphere of the scene was ignited in an instant. Everyone's eyes were brimming with fiery passion. Their target was Tan Xiu, not Yi Taifu. Eyesight and hand speed. This was the most basic and most important ability of a gambling expert. But now, Tan Xiu didn't have any chance to use any tricks. He could only rely on his own ability to win the gambling game. This made many people think that Tan Xiu's previous win was entirely due to luck. But now, their thinking had completely changed. In a fight between experts, luck played a part, but gambling skills were more important. It was said that 9 out of 10 gambles were lost because 8 out of 10 gambles were cheating. There was a bit of sympathy in the dealer's eyes. She quickly looked at Yi Taifu and said, Mr. Tang has grabbed the king card, and Mr. Yi has grabbed the little king card. I declare that Mr. Tang is the winner of this gambling game. Puff, Yi Taifu was furious. Under the huge blow, his mouth spurted out a mouthful of blood. As his vision darkened, his body stiffened and fell backward. Trash. Chen Kai's complexion was ashen. He was like a mad wild dog. Looking at Yi Taifu who fell in front of him, not only he didn't have any sympathy, but he also ran a few steps and fiercely kicked Yi Taifu. In this gambling game, not only did he lose all the money he won from Jia Ruidao, but he also lost all his capital. How could he not be angry? However, his action made everyone's complexion stagnant. Their hearts were filled with disbelief. Quite a number of people even showed anger and began to discuss in low voices. Isn't this Chen Kai too shameless? He can't afford to lose. Although Yi Taifu had lost today, and lost miserably, but he had helped him win a lot of money before. Now that he lost, he treats him like this. Chen Kai's character is too bad, right? His Chen family's old face has been thrown away by him. He can be used in front of others, but not in the back. Simply shameless enough to make one's hair stand on end. I've decided to immediately terminate the business with the Chen family. With this kind of character, I think the rest of the Chen family is also not so good. It's really a pity for Yi Taifu, a gambling expert of his generation, to fall into such a miserable end. I really want to beat Chen Kai up. He's a famous person in Jingmen Island, but he doesn't even have the slightest demeanor. I'm really drunk on him. Our Jingmen Island's face has been thrown away by this Chen Kai guy. Losing is losing. He can pick it up and let it go. Why does he need to make such a contemptible move? It's really outrageous. Shameless. Chapter 92. At this moment, Chu Yi and Bai Tao looked at Chen Kai with contempt. They secretly regretted coming to Jingmen Island to wade into these muddy waters. Seeing that the gambling game was over, the two of them quietly left. As the owner of the Paradise Club, Ouyang Lulu didn't stay for long. Her contemptuous eyes lingered on Chen Kai for a moment before her eyes stopped on Tan Xiu. She looked at Tan Xiu deeply and then chased after Chu Yi and Bai Tao. She wanted to know more about Tan Xiu from Chu Yi and Bai Tao. She wanted to know more about Tan Xiu, who she couldn't understand. At this moment, Jia Ruidao received the only relic of his deceased wife, the exquisite jade pendant carved with a coiling dragon and phoenix. His eyes were filled with sparkling tears. Originally, he thought that his life was over. Not only did he lose all his assets, but he also owed huge debts outside. He even lost the last relic of his deceased wife. However, Tan Xiu's victory made him feel as if he had returned to heaven from hell. Brother Tang, thank you, thank you. Jia Ruidao's tone was somewhat whimpering, but every word he said was filled with deep sincerity. Tan Xiu couldn't stand others being deeply grateful to him, nor was he used to people communicating with him in this way. He indifferently shook his head and said, "Prepare to go back to the hotel. Also, if possible, it's best if you can help me book a flight ticket for tonight or tomorrow. I'm going back to Star City." Jia Ruidao quickly said, "Brother Tang, Xiaolong said that he helped you apply for a week's vacation. It's only 2 days now, so you don't need to rush back. On one hand, I want to exchange my winnings and deposit them into your account. On the other hand, I also want to express my gratitude and take you to have fun in Jingmen Island. You don't know, but there are many fun places in Jingmen Island. I'm sure you'll like some of them." Tan Xiu hesitated. He wasn't interested in the fun places in Jingmen Island. His biggest interest was that huge sum of money. According to the agreement between him and Jia Ruidao, he could get half of the nearly 500 million he won. Upon seeing Tan Xiu's hesitation, Gong Dalong quickly said, "Grandmaster Tang, my master is right. We need to convert the chips into money and transfer the money to our accounts. This will take some time. Moreover, I know of a private villa that not only has a beautiful environment, but also has precious wild meat. A few days ago, I heard that the manor hired dozens of martial arts experts to enter a nearby island and hunt a sea flood dragon that had become a spirit. This was the second time in the 10 years since the establishment of the villa, that they had obtained a sea serpent. For the first time, many people ate sea serpent meat. I heard that the taste was simply the best in the world. A sea serpent that had become a spirit? Tan Xiu's eyes lit up, and he was instantly tempted. For his current cultivation, he needed materials from various parts of a fierce beast's body, such as hair, flesh, bones, claws, and so on. These were the most basic materials for refining the body-tempering liquid. In addition, if he encountered a higher-level ferocious beast, he could also refine a higher-level medicine, such as the Golden Bell liquid, which was most suitable for the skin-strengthening stage. "What's the name of the villa?" Tan Xiu asked. "Seaside Straight Manor," said Gong Dalong with a smile. "When are we going there?" Tan Xiu asked again. "If you have time, we can go there immediately after our ship docks tomorrow," said Gong Dalong quickly. "Then I'll stay in Jingmen Island for 2 more days." Tan Xiu nodded and said, "But I need to rest well on the liner, and I don't want anyone to disturb me." Gong Dalong respectfully said, "Don't worry. We won't let anyone disturb you. Also, you need to tell me your bank account number. I'll transfer the money to your account after the chips are converted into money." "All right." Tan Xiu sent his bank account number to Gong Dalong via his mobile phone and then left the VIP private room under the watchful eyes of many people. However, he didn't go back to his room but went to the stern deck where there were few guests. Overlooking the turbulent sea and feeling the cool breeze, a comfortable feeling spontaneously arose in his heart. Recently, he had always been busy running around for all kinds of things. He rarely had free time to think about what to do next. Moreover, he didn't like the fact that there seemed to be a pair of invisible hands pulling him forward. There were a lot of things that he couldn't control. If I can return to my peak, the heavenly Tao of this world will be nothing but a fart. The coldness in Tan Xiu's eyes faded away as he felt somewhat helpless inside. "It's very quiet here." An abrupt voice sounded behind Tan Xiu. Tan Xiu turned his head and found that it turned out to be the owner of the Paradise Club, Ouyang Lulu. Looking at the girl who was only a few years older than him, with a smile on her face, Tan Xiu said indifferently, "Indeed, it's good." Ouyang Lulu looked at Tan Xiu and said with a smile, "Congratulations on winning the bet." Tan Xiu shook his head and didn't speak again. He didn't want to be disturbed at the moment, but Ouyang Lulu came over, which made him feel somewhat helpless inside. If it wasn't because of Ouyang Lulu's identity, he really wanted to drive her away immediately. "You don't welcome me?" Ouyang Lulu, who had an exquisite heart, was keenly aware of Tan Xiu's attitude and immediately asked. "I just want to be alone for a while," Tan Xiu said indifferently. Ouyang Lulu was annoyed. Ever since she was a child, she had encountered countless men who threw themselves at her wave after wave. Even if those men pretended to reject her, but in their hearts, they couldn't wait to take her as their own. However, the feeling she got from Tan Xiu was that he really didn't want her to be here. It was as if he didn't have the slightest interest in her. "Hey, are you still a man or not?" Ouyang Lulu was annoyed and said something very rashly. However, after saying that, she realized that she had lost control of herself and secretly regretted it. Tan Xiu looked at Ouyang Lulu with an indifferent expression and said indifferently, "Do you really want to try whether I'm a man or not? I don't mind having a one-night stand without any responsibility." "You," Ouyang Lulu was furious. Looking at Tan Xiu's indifferent face, she almost wanted to lift her foot and fiercely kick Tan Xiu's face. However, realizing her own combat prowess, she took a deep breath and turned to leave. A few hours later, Tan Xiu, who had returned to his room, received a text message on his mobile. His bank account had received a sum of 250 million yuan. It seems that Jia Ruidao and his disciple keep their promise. This huge sum of money didn't have the slightest ripple in Tan Xiu's heart. For him, money was only an auxiliary for his cultivation. If he didn't need money to buy a lot of things, he really didn't care whether he had money or not. Even if it was a mountain of gold and silver, he wouldn't even glance at it. Paradise Club, inside the general manager's office. Ouyang Lulu angrily sat on the boss's chair and smashed the teacup under her feet. Never in her wildest dreams did she think that after she found Tan Xiu's trace through the surveillance video, she would unexpectedly be ignored by the opposite party. He was so young, yet he actually thought of such a disgusting thing. You may know a person's face, but you don't know his heart. Men are really nothing good. Ouyang Lulu secretly muttered in her heart. Knock, knock, the door was knocked. Come in. Ouyang Lulu quickly adjusted her mood and said. The door was pushed open as Chu Yi and Bai Tao came into the office with a beaming smile. They casually sat on the sofa in the corner of the office. Looking at Ouyang Lulu personally pouring tea for them, Bai Tao asked with a smile, "Old classmate, you've learned something new today, right? We've said before that Tan Xiu is absolutely unfathomable. But I didn't expect that he would win so easily in today's bet." While making tea, Ouyang Lulu lightly said, "He does have some ability, but he's too arrogant and rude. I don't like this kind of person." Chu Yi grinned and said, "I say, great beauty Lulu, it doesn't matter if you like him or not. I'm afraid there are a lot of women who like him. Didn't you notice that many young and beautiful women who were watching the bet today looked at Tan Xiu with eyes full of hot feelings?" Ouyang Lulu coldly snorted and said, "Can those women be compared with me?" Chu Yi stared blankly for a moment before he couldn't help laughing and said, "You're right. If you're a fresh flower, then they're just green foxtail grass. There's no way for you to be compared. However, listening to your tone, it seems that you've met with Tan Xiu alone?" Ouyang Lulu snappily said, "I've indeed met him, but I was blasted back by that bastard. I just found that you men are really shameless. That Tan Xiu is the epitome of shamelessness." Chu Yi and Bai Tao looked at each other in dismay. A strong interest rose in their hearts at the same time. "Old classmate, what did Tan Xiu do to you?" Bai Tao curiously asked. "Yeah. That Tan Xiu wouldn't be so daring as to do anything to you, would he?" Chu Yi hurriedly asked. Ouyang Lulu rolled her eyes at them and snappily said, "He dares." Subsequently, she narrated the whole story of her meeting with Tan Xiu from beginning to end. Finally, she indignantly said, "Tell me, is he still a man? This great ant is as beautiful as a flower, a national beauty. Other men are eager to get close to me. But that Tan Xiu unexpectedly dared to drive this great ant back. It's really preposterous. If I had some martial arts, I would have taught him a lesson at that time." "Don't," Bai Tao quickly said. Chu Yi also quickly said, "I say, old classmate, teaching Tan Xiu a lesson is something you can only think about in your heart. Don't really take action. You don't know that Tan Xiu is very powerful." Looking at their panicked reaction, Ouyang Lulu was confused and asked, "What's wrong with you? Even if that Tan Xiu is powerful, he only has 2 arms and 2 legs. Is it possible that he has 3 heads and 6 arms?" Chu Yi forced a smile and said, "I'm afraid that Tan Xiu is more powerful than having 3 heads and 6 arms. You're the local bully of Jingmen Island, so you should have heard of the Everlasting Feast Hall, right?" "Of course I know. I've also met the little boss of the Everlasting Feast Hall. We've had a meal together, drank wine, and chatted." "Why do you ask?" Ouyang Lulu said. Chapter 93. Chu Yi looked deeply at Ouyang Lulu and said in a deep voice, "Old classmate, your Ouyang family should be one of the best in Jingmen Island in terms of strength, and your intelligence network should be unparalleled. I think you should have heard about what happened in the Everlasting Feast Hall last night, right?" "Of course I have. What do you mean? Ouyang Lulu was surprised. Chu Yi said, last night, 3 experts tried to break through the 1000 revolution array in the everlasting feast hall. One of them was Tan Xiu, and he's the one who broke through the 6th layer of the 1000 revolution array. What? Ouyang Lulu abruptly stood up. The teacup in her hand fell midair, spilling the tea inside. The everlasting feast hall was located in Jingmen Island. She and the restaurant's little boss, Gu Xiaoxua, were friends for nearly 10 years. Although their relationship was not as close as bosom friends, it could be said that they appreciated each other. She knew about the 1000 revolution array, and she also knew that only powerful cultivators could break through it. If it was an ordinary person, they would most likely lose their life inside. A cultivator? Tan Xiu is a cultivator. Ouyang Lulu was shocked like a tidal wave. The news caught her unprepared. Of course, what shocked her the most was not only Tan Xiu's identity as a cultivator, but also the fact that Tan Xiu actually broke through the 6th layer of the 1000 revolution array. The 6th layer. How terrifying was his strength to be able to do that? It seemed that no one had been able to break through the 6th layer of the 1000 revolution array for decades. Looking at the shocked Ouyang Lulu, Chu Yi forced a smile and said, "Old classmate, now you should understand why I stopped you, right? I can't see through that guy, but I'm sure that he's very powerful. So powerful that it makes one's hair stand on end. So, don't provoke him. This kind of person can only be a friend, not an enemy." Ouyang Lulu's sensual red lips squirmed a few times. Finally, she forced a smile and said, "You're right. If we really provoke such a fearful expert, let alone me, I'm afraid our entire Ouyang family won't be able to withstand it. More than 20 years ago, there was a big family in the northwest. Because one of their clansmen provoked a terrifying expert, the whole family was killed overnight." Chu Yi said in surprise, "You even know this kind of thing? Wasn't this matter suppressed by the country's bigwigs and not leaked out?" Ouyang Lulu whispered, "My granduncle was the one who handled this matter in the past." "Your granduncle is that big shot?" Chu Yi and Bai Tao exclaimed in unison. Ouyang Lulu waved her hand and said, "What are you thinking? What was that big shot's surname? What's our last name?" "What I mean is that the boss sent my granduncle to take care of the funeral." "I see." Chu Yi and Bai Tao suddenly understood. Ouyang Lulu said, "I really don't understand how Jia Ruidao knows such a powerful person. That Tan Xiu is already so powerful at such a young age. How terrifying must the cultivation of his seniors be? Sect elders? Cultivation?" Chu Yi and Bai Tao looked at Ouyang Lulu with puzzlement. Ouyang Lulu rolled her eyes at the two and said, "Haven't you realized that Tan Xiu is a cultivator? Don't tell me that with your family background and information channels, you don't know the existence of cultivators in this world." Chu Yi and Bai Tao were directly petrified. Cultivators. They had heard of such people, but they had never seen one before. Regarding such legendary figures, they had always thought that it was a blessing to meet them, and that it was normal to not meet them. But at this moment, Ouyang Lulu said that Tan Xiu was a cultivator, and it set off a monstrous wave in their hearts. However, the two of them carefully thought about it. The more they thought about it, the more they felt that Ouyang Lulu was right. Tan Xiu was so powerful. If he was not a cultivator, how could a normal person do such a heaven-defying thing? This won't do. We must immediately find someone to investigate Tan Xiu and see what he needs. If we can't make friends with him while he's young, then once he grows up, I'm afraid it will be extremely difficult for us to make friends with him again." Chu Yi spoke with a resolute and decisive tone. Bai Tao also nodded and said, "I'll immediately send the news back to the family. Even if we have to use the entire family's connections, we must find out what Tan Xiu likes and dislikes. Even if we can't become Tan Xiu's real friend, we still have to think of a way to make him owe us a big favor." "Right." Chu Yi nodded heavily. Ouyang Lulu looked at the two's solemn expression as her mind raced. After she had guessed Tan Xiu's true identity, how could she not have the same idea? After a night of drifting, the luxury liner finally docked at Jingmen Island's port at noon the next day. As the guests left, Tan Xiu and Jia Ruidao, master and disciple, leisurely left the liner. When it was almost lunchtime, the five of them didn't stop and drove to the seaside Strait Manor. When they were at sea, Gong Dalong had called and booked a private box, so the five of them decided to have lunch at the seaside Strait Manor. Jingmen Island's west coast. In a majestic and large-scale villa district. This was the location of the seaside Strait Manor. 2 cars arrived at the entrance and were strictly inspected before they were allowed to pass. What made Tan Xiu surprised was that there were a lot of security personnel in the manor. Patrols could be seen everywhere, and each and every one of these security personnel had a strong build and steady footsteps. It was obvious that they were martial artists. What's the origin of this seaside Strait Manor? Tan Xiu, who was sitting in the back seat, looked at Jia Ruidao in the front passenger seat and asked. Jia Ruidao said, I don't know the specific origin. However, I know that the owner of the seaside Strait Manor is from the imperial capital. He has been operating here for more than 20 years and has a huge influence. However, in recent years, because the owner of the seaside Strait Manor is old and his health is not very good, his son, Tang Dong, is in charge of the overall situation of the manor. Tan Xiu nodded and said with great interest, I'd like to meet the old owner of the manor. Maybe we can talk about some common topics. Jia Ruidao couldn't help laughing and said, Brother Tang, I'm afraid it's not easy to meet the old owner of the manor. I don't know how many dignitaries in the entire Jingmen Island want to visit him, but all of them are rejected at the door. I once heard that a big shot in Jingmen Island who wants to meet the old owner of the manor has to make an appointment for half a month in advance, only to get the opportunity to receive him for half an hour. He's so arrogant. Tan Xiu was surprised. Jia Ruidao said with a smile, it's not that he's arrogant, but his background is big enough, so he's very unyielding. In fact, I can guess his origin, but I'm not 100% sure. Tan Xiu asked doubtfully, tell me about your guess. Jia Ruidao said, he's surnamed Tang, and there's only one big family surnamed Tang in the imperial capital. Tan Xiu said, is this big family in the imperial capital very powerful? Jia Ruidao replied without hesitation, it's more than powerful, it's terrifying. In the entire country, there are no more than 5 big families that are more powerful than the Tang family. Think about it. In a dignified country with a population of 1.4 to 1.5 billion, there are no more than 5 families that are more powerful than the Tang family. How strong is this Tang family? Yes, it's indeed very strong. Tan Xiu nodded and said. After entering the manor, 2 cars stopped in the spacious parking lot. Immediately, 4 middle-aged men in suits strode forward and quickly opened the door for everyone. Welcome. A middle-aged man wearing glasses seemed to have been waiting here for a long time. His eyes flashed and said with a smile. Jia Ruidao was surprised, Chief Hu. Why did you come personally? Hu Xinyu said with a smile, I heard Grandmaster Jia has returned triumphantly from the Paradise Club, so I naturally came out to greet you. Moreover, I also came to pay my respects to that powerful gambling Grandmaster. Jia Ruidao smiled and introduced, Chief Hu, you got the news really fast. Let me introduce you. This is Brother Tang who helped me win the bet, Tan Xiu. Brother Tang, this is the receptionist of the Seaside Strait Manor, Hu Xinyu. Hu Xinyu looked at Tan Xiu. Although he had long received the news that Tan Xiu was young, he never thought that he would be this young. With a bright smile on his face, he quickly extended his hand to greet, Welcome, Mr. Tang. I've heard about your casino yesterday. If the Paradise Club wasn't at sea, I would have immediately rushed over to learn from you. You're welcome. Tan Xiu didn't like to socialize, but he didn't want to slap a smiling face. Since someone had warmly welcomed him, he didn't want to give them a face. Hu Xinyu said with a smile, Everyone, please come with me. Your box has been reserved and the food is also being prepared. You can have your meal soon. Soon, under Hu Sinyu's lead, everyone came to a luxurious European-style villa. After understanding it, Tan Xiu understood that each villa in the seaside straight manor would only entertain a group of guests. Please wait a moment. I'll immediately order the kitchen to serve the dishes. Wait. Tan Xiu opened his mouth to stop Hu Sinyu. Mr. Tang, what can I do for you? Hu Sinyu asked. Tan Xiu said, I want to see the old master of your seaside straight manor. I don't know if you can introduce me. Hu Sinyu hesitated for a moment. After a moment, he forced a smile and said, Mr. Tang, our old master is old and doesn't care about worldly affairs in recent years. So, I'm afraid I can't do anything about it. Tan Xiu was silent for a moment and then said, since I can't see your old master, it shouldn't be a problem for me to see the current manager, Tang Dong, right? I just have a few questions to ask him. Hu Sinyu said, I'll convey your request to my boss. If he wants to see you, I'll inform you at that time. All right. Tan Xiu said. At this moment, a loud voice came from outside the villa. A few seconds later, a figure appeared at the door of the villa's hall. Boundless heavenly venerable, this poor Taoist came uninvited. I hope you can forgive me. Chapter 94. The newcomer was a sage-like old Taoist. He wore a Taoist robe and had his hair combed into a bun. He held a horsetail whisk in his hand and wore cloud boots on his feet. There was a faint smile on his thin face. You are? As the reception manager of the villa, Hu Sinyu immediately stood up and asked when he saw the old Taoist who had taken the liberty to visit. After all, if Jia Ruidao, Tan Xiu, and the others didn't want to see this old Taoist, then he would be responsible for driving this old Taoist out. The old Taoist scanned the others with a scrutinizing gaze and finally stopped on Tan Xiu. With a smile, he said, this old Taoist hails from the Xiang Temple in the northwest. My Taoist title is Tao Master Zi. I was invited by someone to Jingmen Island as a guest, and I inadvertently heard about what happened in the everlasting feast hall yesterday, so I came to visit Benefactor Tang. Jia Ruidao asked with a sinking tone, how did you know that Brother Tang is here? Tao Master Zi said with a smile, presumably, you are Benefactor Jia, right? Someone recognized you just now and said that you were with almsgiver Tang yesterday. Therefore, this humble Taoist deduced that this is almsgiver Tang. I'm Tan Xiu. Tan Xiu nodded. What business do you have with me? Tao Master Zi said with a smile, this poor Taoist wants to invite Benefactor Tang to cooperate with me to break into the Evil Dragon Sea area. I wonder if Benefactor Tang is interested. Evil Dragon Sea area? Tan Xiu had never heard of this name before. He immediately asked, where is the Evil Dragon Sea area? Why do you want to barge into the Evil Dragon Sea region? Tao Master Zi was surprised, Benefactor Tang doesn't know about the Evil Dragon Sea area? I don't know. Tan Xiu shook his head. Tao Master Zi said, the Evil Dragon Sea area is thousands of miles away from Jingmen Island. It's a small channel in the South China Sea. As our Purple Sun Temple is best at refining artifacts, this penniless priest plans to collect some materials from ferocious beasts and a special ore. This penniless priest plans to hunt some ferocious beasts. However, this humble Taoist knows that his strength is meager. If he were to go alone, it would be very difficult for him to escape unscathed. Therefore, I heard that Benefactor Tang's cultivation is extremely high, so I wanted to invite you to go with me. Evil Dragon Sea area. Kill berserk beasts. Looking for special ores. Tan Xiu was shocked and immediately asked, when are we leaving? Is it really just the two of us? Tao Master Zi said with a smile, it seems Benefactor Tang has agreed. That's right, just the two of us. This poor Taoist would like to invite a few more people, but this poor Taoist has very few connections. Moreover, this poor Taoist is on Jingmen Island, so there is no way for me to invite people of the same Tao. Tan Xiu was silent for a moment. Two faces appeared in his mind. They were Xiao Mingjin and Miao Wentong. He was considering whether he should invite the two of them along. Others might not know about him, but he was well aware of it. Currently, he only had the strength of the first layer of Star's tyrannical body at the peak of Qi refining realm. If he were to fight with experts like Xiao Mingjin and Miao Wentong, perhaps he would be killed in an instant. One more helper meant one more chance of survival. Tan Xiu made a decision in his heart and said, since Dao Master Z can't invite others, then I'll invite 2 people. To be honest, I also need materials from the dire beasts. Once I invite them, we can split our harvest equally between the 4 of us. How about it? Dao Master Z slightly hesitated before he nodded and said with a smile, then I'll have to trouble Benefactor Tang. Tan Xiu grabbed his mobile and pulled out the business card that Miao Wentong gave him. Then, he dialed the phone number on it. At this moment, Miao Wentong and Xiao Mingjin were staying in a 5-star hotel, talking about what happened in the Paradise Club. As Xiao Mingjin listened to Miao Wentong's vivid speech, he secretly regretted that he didn't come to watch the fight. That Yi Taifu's loss is not unjust. Comparing eyesight and speed with a cultivator, he's just asking for trouble. However, Tang Xiu's style of doing things was really hard to fathom. A dignified cultivator unexpectedly ran to help others gamble. What an interesting young man. Xiao Mingjin said with a chuckle. Miao Wentong said with a smile, that's right. A cultivator cultivates his mind and temperament, and strives to improve his cultivation. This is the first time I've come across a cultivator who participated in gambling. However, because of the previous conflict, I apologize to Tan Xiu. If he doesn't forgive me, I can't do anything about it. Xiao Mingjin shook his head and said, I think Tan Xiu isn't a narrow-minded person. Since you've apologized, I think he won't take the previous matter to heart. I hope so. Miao Wentong said with a wry smile. Xiao Mingjin no longer mentioned the topic about Tan Xiu. He changed the topic and said, Brother Miao, the annual Bauhinia auction is tonight. Can you get the tickets? I actually have 2 purposes in coming to Jingmen Island. The first is to break through the 1000 Revolution Array, and the second is to participate in the Bauhinia auction. Miao Wentong said with a smile, actually, I also have this purpose. Coincidentally, some friends in the business world in Jingmen Island gave me several tickets yesterday. Let's go together in the evening. However, I have to say something first. This time, I've prepared a lot of money to buy a few things I need. Xiao Mingjin said with a smile, I won't compete with you maliciously. But I'll go all out for the things I need. After all, the annual Bauhinia auction is not a lot of useful things for us cultivators. I understand. Miao Wentong nodded and said. Ring, 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 his cell phone rang, interrupting their chat. Miao Wentong took out his cell phone and looked at the caller ID. It was an unfamiliar number. According to his previous habit, he wanted to directly hang up the call. However, when Tan Xiu's appearance appeared in his mind, he immediately changed his mind. He pressed the answer button and said, I'm Miao Wentong. Who are you? I'm Tan Xiu. Tan Xiu's voice came from the phone. Miao Wentong's pupils shrunk. A happy expression suddenly appeared on his face as he quickly asked, Mr. Tang, is there something you need from me? There is. A Daoist who claims to be Dao Master Z invited me to the Evil Dragon Sea area to hunt fierce beasts. I want to ask if you're interested. Miao Wentong quickly looked at Xiao Mingjin and said with a sinking tone, I know Dao Master Z. I've known him for more than 20 years. I'm very interested. I wonder if I can bring one more person with me. It just so happens that Xiao Mingjin is also here. All right. Tan Xiu said. Miao Wentong asked, when will it be sent out? Where shall we meet? Tan Xiu said, if you can, come to the Seaside Straight Manor now. After you arrive here, look for Manager Hu Xinyu. He'll take you there. All right, all right. We'll immediately catch up. The call ended. Miao Wentong repeated Tan Xiu's words and grinned, Brother Xiao, it seems that Tan Xiu is really a broad-minded person. He invited us to the Evil Dragon Sea area to hunt fierce beasts. I think this is a good opportunity for us to make friends with him. Xiao Mingjin stood up and said with a smile, it's indeed a heaven-sent opportunity. However, the Evil Dragon Sea area is full of dangers, so we must be very careful. Let's go. Okay. In the seaside Straight Manor Villa, Tan Xiu put away his mobile as he looked at Dao Master Z and said, let's have a meal together. I believe that the two people I invited will also arrive soon. I don't have much time. Since we've reached an agreement, we'll immediately leave after they arrive. Dao Master Z said with a smile, I didn't expect that Benefactor Tang would be so swift and decisive. This poor Daoist admires you. Then this poor Daoist will respectfully accept. Jia Ruidao looked at Dao Master Z and then looked at Tan Xiu. He found that he seemed to have seen a special circle, and he simply couldn't squeeze into this circle. However, he was an extremely tactful person, so he immediately warmly welcomed Dao Master Z to take a seat. The lunch was very sumptuous. It was so sumptuous that even Tan Xiu felt that it was somewhat extravagant. At the same time, his heart was filled with helplessness. For example, the two main dishes were made from good quality fierce beasts' meat. If he were to give these fierce beasts' meat to him, he would definitely be able to use it as the main material to refine the golden bell liquid. What a pity! The spiritual power in the meat has been completely consumed, and it won't be of much benefit to the body. Amidst Tan Xiu's sigh, the lunch was finished. Jia Ruidao wanted to spend more time with Tan Xiu, but he knew that Tan Xiu had something to do later, so he got up and left with his 3 disciples. Tan Xiu didn't urge him to stay. He didn't even say any polite words as he quietly watched Jia Ruidao leave. Benefactor Tang, this poor Daoist heard that you broke through the 1000 revolution array in the everlasting feast hall. It's really amazing. To tell you the truth, this poor Daoist has also broken through the 1000 revolution array of the everlasting feast hall. But unfortunately, this poor Daoist's cultivation is limited. I could only break through the 3rd layer and had no choice but to withdraw. Dao Master Z said while holding his horsetail whisk while sitting face to face with Tan Xiu. Tan Xiu shook his head and said, my cultivation is very low, and my strength is also very weak. However, I know a lot about arrays, so breaking arrays is naturally more powerful than the average cultivators. When we arrive at the Evil Dragon Sea area, I'm afraid I won't be able to help much when it comes to hunting high-level fierce beasts. Dao Master Z was startled. He was silent for a while before he solemnly said, Benefactor Tang, don't belittle yourself. In my eyes, a formation master is far stronger than a martial cultivator with a powerful cultivation base. When the time comes, Benefactor Tang only needs to arrange the killing array, and we will be responsible for leading the fierce beasts into the array. When the time comes, it will be much easier to hunt them. Tan Xiu thought about it and understood Dao Master Z's meaning. He nodded and said, arranging the array is not a problem, but I need some materials. What materials? Dao Master Z asked. Tan Xiu said, jades. The better the quality of the jades, the better the array I can arrange. In addition, I also need to engrave some talismans, which will be used when arranging the array. Dao Master Z said with a smile, these are trivial matters. This poor Daoist has a friend in Jingmen Island who runs a jade business. So be it. This poor Daoist will contact him now and ask him to send you the jades you need as soon as possible. As for the talismans, I can only trouble Benefactor Tang. No problem. Tan Xiu continued, to engrave the talismans, I need to buy some things. So be it. You wait here for the 2 people I invited, I'll go buy some things. After I come back and engrave the talismans, we'll immediately set off. Alright. Chapter 95. Just as Tan Xiu walked out of the villa's hall, a middle-aged man walked into the courtyard. He had a square face, a well-proportioned build, and a pair of bright and spirited eyes. Who are you looking for? I'm looking for Tan Xiu. Tan Xiu raised his brows as he sized him up and said, I'm Tan Xiu. Who are you? I'm Tang Dong. I heard you want to see me. At the same time, Tang Dong was also sizing up Tan Xiu with a puzzled expression. He couldn't understand why this young man, whose fame had spread far and wide in Jingmen Island in the past 2 days, wanted to see him. Tan Xiu nodded and said, That's right. I originally wanted to see the manor's old master. But I heard that it's very difficult to see him, so I wanted to see you. There's something I need to ask you. How about we find a quiet place? Tang Dong looked at the villa behind Tan Xiu, turned around and said, Come with me. There's a villa nearby that specializes in providing tea and drinks. It's generally not open to the public. Quickly. The two of them came to the villa. As the waiter brewed the tea, Tang Dong tasted it and looked at Tan Xiu, asking, Tell me. What do you want from me? Tan Xiu said, I'm interested in the ingredients you use to make the main dish. I wonder if you can tell me where you hunted fierce beasts. So it turns out to be this matter. In fact, many people know the place where we hunt fierce beasts. There's a trench near Jingmen Island called the Eye of Death. There are some fierce beasts there. Each and every one of them is very fierce, and most of them even have simple spiritual wisdom. Hunting fierce beasts is not easy, is it? Tan Xiu said. Of course it's not easy. Every time we send people to the Eye of Death, some people are injured, and some even died several times. This is also the reason why the food in our seaside strait manor is extremely expensive. With a face full of understanding, Tan Xiu said, I can see that the security personnel of your manor are all martial artists. If you pay a little more attention and use some weapons, you should be able to hunt fierce beasts. Last question, does your villa have any dire beast corpses for sale? Tang Dong's brows wrinkled as he asked in puzzlement, You need the bodies of fierce beasts? Yes. Tan Xiu said. Tang Dong shook his head and said, Our manor does have some fierce beasts' corpses, but we won't sell them. That's because it's extremely difficult for us to hunt down a vicious beast, and our villa's specialty dish requires the vicious beast's corpse as the main ingredient. So, sorry. Tan Xiu was silent for a while and then slowly said, If I don't need the meat, can you sell me the remaining hairs, claws, scales, bones, blood, and other materials? Tang Dong curiously asked, What do you need these things for? Tan Xiu said calmly, I know how to set up a formation. I need these things to set up a formation. Tang Dong was surprised, You know arrays? That kind of chi men dun jia. Tan Xiu nodded and said, I believe you already know what I did in the everlasting feast hall. If I didn't know arrays, how could I break through the 6 layers of the 1000 revolution array? Tang Dong patted his forehead and said with a smile, I'm really smart, but I'm muddle-headed this time. I can sell the things you need to you, but business is business. I want to know how much you can offer me. Tan Xiu thought for a moment and then seriously said, I'll buy the remaining hairs, claws, scales, bones, or other things from any fierce beast for 5 million. How about it, 5 million? Tang Dong stared at Tan Xiu with a dumbfounded expression. Never in his dreams did he expect that Tan Xiu would give such a high price. It must be noted that apart from the meat, there weren't many other things that could be used in their villa. Even so, the dishes cooked by each fierce beast could only be sold for about 10 million. As for the remaining parts, they sold them at a very low price. What? You're not satisfied? Tan Xiu asked with a puzzled expression. Tang Dong repeatedly waved his hand and said, No, no, no. Of course I'm satisfied. The price you gave is reasonable. We'll make the deal. But when do you need it? If you have it now, I can buy it now, said Tan Xiu. Tang Dong immediately got up and seriously said, It just so happens that our villa has some remaining fierce beast parts. I'll take you there to have a look. All right. Tan Xiu immediately got up. However, when he followed Tang Dong for a dozen steps, he suddenly remembered that he should buy the materials to inscribe talismans. Immediately, he said, I have a presumptuous request. I don't know if I can say it. Say it. Tang Dong said. I'm going to buy something. Can you send someone to buy it for me? Tan Xiu said. It's not expensive. I believe you should be able to buy it by asking outside. Tang Dong said with a smile, it's a small matter. Just write the things you want to buy on a piece of paper. I'll immediately send someone to buy it. We'll talk about the money later. All right. 10 minutes later, Tan Xiu followed Tang Dong to the kitchen in the depths of the villa. Behind the kitchen was a large warehouse. Inside the warehouse was a large freezer with 2 frozen fierce beast carcasses. Outside was an ordinary space where the dissected fierce beast parts were discarded. There are 4 dissected fierce beasts here that are useless to us. If you're satisfied with them, I can sell them to you according to the price you mentioned. Tang Dong looked at Tan Xiu with some expectation in his heart. After observing for a few minutes, Tan Xiu nodded and said, I want these things. I can transfer the money to you immediately. But can I ask you a favor? Say it. Tang Dong happily said. Tan Xiu said, I came to Star City, but I have to go to the sea for a few days. I don't have the time nor the energy to send these materials back to Star City. I'll give you an address. Can you send someone to send them to me? I'll arrange someone to receive them after you send them there. Tang Dong said with a smile, it's a small matter. The 4 fierce beasts materials were worth a total of 20 million yuan. Tan Xiu had recently learned how to transfer money through mobile banking, so he transferred 20 million yuan to Tang Dong. I want all the materials from the dissected fierce beasts that your villa has hunted within half a year. Write down my cell phone number. Send someone to Star City and I'll immediately transfer the money to you. After the transaction, Tan Xiu spoke again. Tang Dong stared blankly for a moment and asked with astonishment, only half a year? Yes. Tan Xiu said. Only half a year. These fierce beasts that you've hunted are all low-level fierce beasts. They'll be useful to me for half a year. But after that, unless you can hunt more powerful fierce beasts, their materials will no longer be useful to me. Tang Dong suddenly understood and said with a smile, don't worry. Since I only have half a year, I'll naturally send more people to the Eye of Death to hunt a lot of fierce beasts. Tan Xiu nodded and said, if that's the case, then I'll go back to the villa where I dined before. I'll buy the things I need and give the money directly to your people. Tang Dong waved his hand and said, I already know what the things you want to buy are. Those things won't cost much, so forget about the money. He was not a fool. He had already earned a lot of money from Tan Xiu for the materials from the fierce beasts' corpses. He simply didn't care about that small amount of money. He might as well do Tan Xiu a favor and do a few more transactions with Tan Xiu in the future. All right. Tan Xiu simply agreed and left straight away. Tang Dong squinted his eyes as he looked at Tan Xiu's back. A strange feeling rose inside his heart. The Tan Xiu he was facing was obviously a young man in his 20s. But his behavior and demeanor were not like a young man at all. Instead, he was like a mature and steady person who once had an extremely distinguished status. This feeling made him feel a bit absurd. When Tan Xiu returned to the villa where he dined before, he found that Xiao Mingjin and Miao Wentong had arrived and were chatting with Dao Master Zi. Mr. Tang. Mr. Tang. Xiao Mingjin and Miao Wentong got up at the same time. Their tone was a bit cordial. Tan Xiu nodded to the two and said, you need to wait for a moment. I'll send someone to buy the materials needed to inscribe the talisman. It will be delivered soon. After I finish inscribing the talisman, we can set off. Xiao Mingjin and Miao Wentong looked at each other without saying anything. Dao Master Zi faintly smiled and said, Benefactor Tang, this poor Daoist didn't expect that the 2 friends you invited turned out to be Benefactor Xiao and Benefactor Miao. This poor Daoist is acquainted with them, but I didn't know that they also came to Jingmen Island. When I was chatting with them, I heard them talking about the Redbud auction. If possible, can we wait until tomorrow to go to the Evil Dragon Sea area? Stalling for time. Tan Xiu frowned. He was a bit unhappy inside. But he didn't show it directly. Instead, he asked, what is the Redbud auction? Miao Wentong quickly explained, the Redbud auction is an annual large-scale auction in the country. At that time, there will be some auction items that are useful to us cultivators. I've participated in the Redbud auction several times. Although I spent a lot of money, the harvest was quite plentiful. If we miss it this time, I'm afraid we'll have to wait for another year. Items useful to cultivators. Tan Xiu pondered for a moment before he slowly said, such being the case, we'll leave tomorrow. When is the time of the Bauhinia auction? Can I go with you to have a look? Miao Wentong secretly sighed in relief. He was really afraid that Tan Xiu wouldn't agree. Upon hearing Tan Xiu's inquiry, he immediately replied, 2 days ago, my friends in Jingmen Island gave me 4 tickets to the Redbud auction. I originally thought that there will only be me and brother Xiao, but now with the 2 of you, the tickets are just enough. Tan Xiu said, that's good. It just so happens that I have some spare money in my hands. I'll go there to see if I can buy some things I need. Miao Wentong and Xiao Mingjin glanced at each other. Both of them secretly smiled wryly inside. They wanted to be friends with Tan Xiu. If Tan Xiu took a fancy to the same thing in the auction, they probably wouldn't be able to compete with Tan Xiu. P.S. After 12 o'clock tonight, this book will officially go on the shelves. At that time, Quiet Night will release 10 chapters. Brothers and sisters, please throw your guaranteed monthly tickets to Quiet Night. I'll be very grateful. In addition, after this book goes on the shelves, the update speed will be accelerated. It will absolutely make the brothers and sisters happy. Finally, I'm asking for a recommendation vote. Chapter 96. In the evening. The pale Tan Xiu followed the Miao Wentong trio to the venue of the Bauhinia auction, Jingmen Island International Business Conference Center. On the 18th floor. In the huge auction venue, there were thousands of tables and chairs. 1/3 of the seats were already occupied. Moreover, some people were rushing in from outside. The 4 of them randomly found a place to sit, and as soon as they sat down, the attendant at the auction site presented them with the list of items to be auctioned. Tan Xiu sat on a chair, looking at the pictures and text introduction of the auction items on the list. The list had 3 pages. When he finished reading the first 2 pages, a bit of disappointment appeared in his eyes. Although many of those items were good, but for him, they were simply useless. Opening the last page, Tan Xiu's eyes roughly glanced at the list. However, in an instant, his eyes stagnated, revealing a look of disbelief. Space crack stone. It turned out to be a space crack stone. If this picture was taken correctly, then it was definitely the main material to refine an interspatial ring, space crack stone. Tang Xiu's heartbeat accelerated in that instant, and a look of determination could be seen in his eyes. Originally, he was a bit worried. Tomorrow, he would go to the Evil Dragon Sea area. If he hunted large ominous beasts, or several of them, how would he transport them back? But if he could refine an interspatial ring, transporting them back would absolutely not be a problem. Starting price of 5 million. Each bid must not be less than 500,000. Tan Xiu thought for a moment. He felt that with his current funds, it should not be a problem to bid for this fist-sized space crack stone. In the Paradise Club, he won the bet with Yi Taifu. After deducting the 249 million he gave to Jia Ruidao, he got 250 million. Using it to buy materials from the ominous beasts, he spent 20 million. Now, he had a total of 230 million. The base price of the space crack stone is 5 million. I still have 230 million. It should not be a problem to buy it. If it is not enough, I will borrow money from Jia Ruidao. When I have money, I will return it to him. Tan Xiu secretly thought. Just as Tan Shio suppressed the surprise in his heart and looked at the list again, he found something useful to him, 1,000-year-old wild ginseng. If it was in the immortal world, not to mention 1,000-year wild ginseng, even a 10,000-year wild ginseng wouldn't be lacking. The 1,000-year-old wild ginseng was what he used to feed his spirit beasts. But now, it was too precious to him. If he could buy this 1,000-year-old wild ginseng, he would have one more main ingredient to refine the Golden Bell Elixir, and the Golden Bell Elixir would be extremely effective. Buy. You must get it. Tan Shio looked at the price below and was stunned. His eyes were filled with disbelief. 50 million. The base price of this 1,000-year-old ginseng was 50 million. Furthermore, the increment in each bid must not be less than 2 million. Tan Shio's lips wriggled. If I move all the 1,000-year-old ginseng from my herb garden in the immortal realm, I should be able to buy dozens of earths, right? This price is really a scam. His gaze continued to move downwards, and he discovered that there were a few other items that were useful to cultivators, but not very useful to him. Finally, he locked his eyes on the void crack stone and the 1,000-year-old ginseng. In his heart, he silently calculated how much he would have to pay to get these two things. Mr. Tang, what do you fancy? After Xiaomingzhen finished looking at the list in his hand, he turned to look at Tan Shio sitting next to him and asked in a low voice. Tan Shio pointed to the void crack stone and the 1,000-year-old ginseng and said, I need these two things. Buy them as much as possible. Xiaomingzhen looked at the void crack stone and was somewhat surprised. Because he didn't know what kind of stone it was. The auctioneer only commented, rare or hard material, suspected to be a meteorite from outer space. However, the 1,000-year-old ginseng made him a bit depressed because he also fancied it. Nowadays on Earth, the 1,000-year-old ginseng was very rare. It had simply reached the point of being priceless. Even if some people wanted to buy it with a lot of money, they didn't even hear of the 1,000-year-old ginseng being sold. Moreover, not to mention a 1,000-year-old ginseng, even a 500-year-old wild ginseng was extremely rare and rare nowadays. Forget it. I'll give it up. Xiaomingzhen secretly sighed inside. He turned around and touched Miao Wentong, telling him about the two items that Tan Shio was prepared to bid on. Miao Wentong also fancied the 1,000-year-old wild ginseng. But just like Xiaomingzhen, he finally decided to give it up after knowing that Tan Shio wanted it. As for Dao Master Z, he was purely here to be a bystander. Even if he fancied something, he wouldn't bid. It's not that he didn't want to buy it, but he was poor. He was so poor that he simply couldn't afford it. At 8:00 in the evening, along with the appearance of a young woman on the auction stage, the originally noisy auction venue suddenly quieted down. Everyone's gazes were focused on the young lady. Welcome to the annual Chinese Redbud Flower Auction. This year's Bauhinia auction will be held on Jingmen Island. All the items on the auction list have been delivered. I am Xiao Ai, the auctioneer of this year's Bauhinia auction. I believe that everyone has already seen the items that will be auctioned in this year's auction list. I also believe that everyone already has the items that they want to auction. I wish everyone in advance that they will be able to harvest a lot and return with a full load. Next, I announce the official start of the 21st Bauhinia auction. The first item that we will auction is a precious antique. It's a blue and white porcelain vase that was produced in the late Ming and early Qing dynasty. Everyone, do not underestimate this blue and white porcelain vase. The seal on it shows that it was used by the imperial family. It is very likely that it was the residence of the founding emperor of the Qing dynasty. Tan Shio quietly sat below, listening to the auctioneer's bombastic introduction. After announcing the start of the auction, he looked at the hundreds of guests who came to participate in the Bauhinia auction and competed with each other to bid. A strange feeling emerged in his heart. As the saying goes, gold in troubled times, collection in prosperous times. Now, he deeply understood the true meaning of this sentence. Items were auctioned at high prices. Items were bought at high prices. He couldn't help but sigh. Nowadays, there were many rich people. Moreover, there were even more rich people who loved to collect. Of course, he also had another kind of thought. That is, people are stupid and have a lot of money. It's meaningless to buy a dead object at home. During the 2-hour auction, Tan Xiu didn't bid. On the contrary, Xiao Mingjin and Miao Wentong each bid once and bought the items that they needed. Next, we will auction a rare ore. This rare ore is very hard. It is suspected to be a meteorite that fell on Earth from the outer space. I believe that this is a precious ore with a very high collection value. Perhaps, its future appreciation space will be difficult to estimate. Its starting price is 5 million, and each bid must be no less than 500,000. Now, the bidding begins. The auctioneer held the space crack stone and explained it with great emotion. Then, he announced the start of the bidding. It's coming. Tan Xiu's spirit was shaken. His eyes were firmly locked on the space crack stone. He didn't rush to bid. Because after 2 hours of observation, he found out that only a few of the people who bid sincerely wanted to buy it. They were just throwing a brick to attract jade. If someone tried to snatch it from them, they would immediately give up. If no one tried to snatch it from them, they might be able to spend a small amount of money to buy something that they liked, 6 million. A voice rang out, and that person also raised the token in his hand. 5 million. 7 million. 5 million. Soon, the price of this space crack stone had climbed to 5 million. However, after that person made his bid, no one else made a bid for more than 10 seconds. A sweet smile hung on the auctioneer's face as she said, "That gentleman bid 5 million. Are there any guests who are willing to bid higher? Everyone, please don't underestimate this rare ore. It's mysterious. Perhaps one day in the future, its value will soar by 10 times or even 20 times compared to now, 10 million. As the auctioneer's voice fell, another voice sounded. Tan Xiu took a deep breath, raised his card and said, 10. 5 million, 15 million. That voice sounded again. Tan Xiu raised his card and shouted, 20 million. Wow! Everyone in the auction venue turned their heads to look at Tang Xiu one after another, and discussions broke out one after another. Who's so rich that he's stupid? A piece of ore of unknown use, even if it's a little rare, shouldn't be worth 20 million. Could it be that he was fooled by the auctioneer and wants to get rich quickly? 20 million for a piece of ore. What kind of joke is this? I think 10 million is high enough. These days, the rich really don't care about money. It's a young man. I wonder which family's prodigal he's from. If I had such a junior, I'd definitely break his legs and make him stay at home to ponder over his mistakes. Could it be that that young man has taken a fancy to the auctioneer? Is he trying to show off in front of her? How interesting. Tan Xiu's hearing was very sharp. He could clearly hear the discussions in the auction, but he still maintained an indifferent expression. He could not be bothered with those who failed to recognize the value of the sky crack stone. Of course, he would not tell everyone the use of the sky crack stone. After all, the sky crack stone was a treasure in his hands, but in the hands of those who did not know how to refine a space ring, it was just a hard stone. The auctioneer looked deeply at Tan Xiu and asked with a smile, "That handsome guy has bid 20 million. Is there anyone who wants to bid higher than 20 million? If there isn't, this precious and rare ore will belong to that handsome guy." There was silence in the auction hall. Just as the auctioneer was about to announce that Tan Xiu had won the bid for the sky crack stone, a voice suddenly sounded, 50 million. P.S. I'll be on the shelves after midnight, and then I'll have to face a month-long battle for the monthly votes. I'm feeling a little nervous, so I hope my brothers and sisters can accompany me to fight for the monthly votes. Brothers and sisters, have you prepared your guaranteed monthly votes? Chapter 97. Everyone in the auction venue was shocked by the sudden voice. Even Tan Xiu, who regarded money as dirt, did not expect that in this era where almost no one could recognize the space-cracking stone, there would be someone willing to buy it at such a high price. Tang Xiu looked toward the source of the voice and found that the guest who quoted the price was an old man in a black Chinese tunic suit. He had a full head of white hair and a kind countenance, looking like a benevolent old man. However, facing everyone's gaze, he showed a complacent look. Especially when he found that Tan Xiu was looking at him, he raised his chin and gave Tan Xiu a provocative look. This is troublesome. Tan Xiu sighed in his heart and raised his bidding card again. 60 million. Wow, the whole auction venue was boiling. Everyone's eyes were wandering between Tan Xiu and the old man. As the saying went, there must be something wrong when something is abnormal. Some quick-witted people were already secretly guessing, is that rare or really a treasure? However, guessing was just guessing, but no one fought for it. The reason was very simple. Even if that ore was precious, they did not know it at all. If it became worthless after they bought it, they would really be the biggest spendthrift. Moreover, the old man who bid for it looked a little ugly, but he did not make another bid. Tan Xiu looked at the old man in the distance with a frozen smile on his face. His face was even uglier than when his father died and his mother got married. He found that the old man's lips moved several times, wanting to make a bid, but he finally stopped. What's going on? Tan Xiu originally wanted to spend a lot, but he did not expect that the other party would stop. The auctioneer's eyes flashed with excitement, and he said in an encouraging tone, there is a saying that the eyes of the masses are as bright as snow. Let me quote a saying, don't miss a thing when you pass by. If this ore is not a rare treasure, who would auction it at such a high price? I am very lucky and happy to be able to see a powerful person with a keen eye who can identify a treasure. That handsome gentleman bid 60 million. Is there a higher price? If not, this rare treasure will belong to that Mr. Anything else? As the auctioneer finished his speech, the discussions in the auction hall became silent. Everyone's eyes lingered on Tang Xiu and the old man. They were very curious. Would the old man make another bid? In fact, some of them were already prepared to fight over the old man if he were to make another bid. Just as the auctioneer said, don't miss it. What if? If the ore was really a rare treasure, even if they didn't recognize it now, they could buy it and study it slowly. Maybe they would get a huge surprise. However, to the disappointment of many people, the old man did not make another bid. The auctioneer felt a little regretful, but she was still very excited. She didn't expect this ore to fetch a high price. As an auctioneer, she could get a 10,000th commission for every item sold. Now that this item had been auctioned for 60 million, she had easily gained some unexpected wealth. I hereby announce that this precious ore has been obtained by that gentleman. You can go backstage to do the transaction now, or you can go backstage to do the transaction after the auction ends. Tan Xiu did not hesitate and immediately rushed backstage. The void crack stone was a precious ore that he urgently needed, so he must get his hands on it as soon as possible. Acceptance. Payment. The transaction went smoothly. Soon, Tan Xiu returned to his seat in the auction hall with the void crack stone. A smile hung on the corner of Miao Wentang's mouth. Although his heart was full of confusion, he didn't understand why Tan Xiu wanted to buy that ore. But this was Tan Xiu's privacy, so he didn't ask much. Instead, he smiled and said in a low voice, "Congratulations to Mr. Tang for obtaining a treasure." Tan Xiu nodded. He hesitated for a moment and then said, "Call me something else later." "Just call me Tan Xiu. I'll also call you by your name." All right." Miao Wentang looked at Tan Xiu's indifferent expression and secretly smiled wryly inside. The auction of the items proceeded very quickly. Tan Xiu also admired the auctioneer's eloquence. Many of the items were originally not worth much, but her witty words stirred many people's emotions and made them generously bid, causing the price of the items to rise steadily. Talent. This word suddenly emerged in Tan Xiu's mind. In the early hours of the morning, the auction was about to come to an end. It was also the last highlight of this auction. The next item is the penultimate item of this auction. It's also the treasure that countless people are paying attention to, the Millennium Ginseng. As we all know, with the rapid development of science and technology, it's very difficult to obtain a real wild ginseng in this era where forests and mountains are heavily exploited. And a Millennium Ginseng is even rarer than a phoenix feather and a unicorn horn. Who can get such a treasure tonight? I hereby announce that the auction begins. The auctioneer, Xiao AI, stepped back a step after she finished speaking, indicating that she would hand over the auction stage to the guests below. 60 million. 70 million, 75 million. 80 million. Tan Xiu didn't rush to participate. He was waiting for the final competition. However, the price kept rising. In just 2 minutes, it had risen to 180 million. This price was not something that he could buy with his current funds. I'm still short of 10 million, but I'm afraid it will be far more than this amount. Do I really need to borrow money from Jia Ruidao? Jia Ruidao will get 250 million, plus his capital. It should be more than 300 million. But he still owes a lot of debt. After paying off the debt, I'm afraid there won't be much left. Tan Xiu's mind was racing. He was hesitating whether he should borrow money from Jia Ruidao or not. Moreover, it was easy to borrow money, but would it be difficult to pay it back? After all, it was a capital of hundreds of millions. Even if he could invite Kang Xia to work for him, even if he wanted to set up a company to make money, how long would it take to earn hundreds of millions? How long would it take to pay off Jia Ruidao's debt? Half a minute later. Tan Xiu made a decision in his mind: borrow it. He believed in his own ability, and he didn't want to miss this Millennium Ginseng. Tan Xiu left his seat and went to the last corner of the auction hall to make a phone call. As a result, he learned that Jia Ruidao had paid off his debt of 220 million, leaving him with 80 million. Tan Xiu didn't hesitate and directly borrowed the 80 million. Ding! A few minutes later, he received a text message on his phone. 80 million had been transferred to his bank account. 218 million, is there any higher bidder? If not, this Millennium Ginseng will belong to that gentleman. The auctioneer looked excited as he loudly asked. Tan Xiu looked at the silent guests around him. He slowly raised the paddle in his hand and said, 220 million. The auctioneer, Xiao Ai's eyes lit up as she said with a smile, sure enough, heroes come from the youth. This handsome gentleman has bid 220 million, which is really a big move. Today's scene reminds me of a saying, heroes come from the youth, and the older ginger is no longer the spicier. I don't think anyone can bid higher than this handsome gentleman, right? If not, this Millennium Ginseng will belong to this handsome gentleman. Many people in the auction hall revealed an angry look. They recognized the saying, heroes come from the youth, but the saying, the older ginger is no longer the spicier, made many people angry. In the front row, a fat middle-aged man, who was snuggling up to a young girl, pulled the gold chain around his neck. He raised the Vacheron Constantine watch on his wrist, which was worth millions, and said with a gruff voice, 230 million. 250 million. A cold light burst out from Tan Xiu's eyes as he shouted in a deep voice. The fat middle-aged man pushed away the young boy next to him, turned his head and stared fiercely at Tan Xiu. He then raised his middle finger and shouted, 300 million. Wow, everyone in the auction hall was shocked by the fat middle-aged man's bid. 300 million. A Millennium Ginseng was auctioned at a sky-high price of 300 million. Everyone began to whisper to each other. What's the background of this stupid fatty? How could he take out 300 million to bid for a Millennium Ginseng? I definitely think that the food he ate only grew meat, not brains. The price of a Millennium Ginseng is at most 150 million. Any more than that and he's a fool. Stupid, even if this Millennium Ginseng is precious, it's not worth 300 million, right? He's obviously competing with that young man. Idiot. There are idiots every year, but this year there are especially many. That damn fatty has money to burn, right? Stupid people with lots of money. Tan Xiu squinted his eyes as he looked at the provocative eyes of the fat middle-aged man. He secretly sighed inside. He couldn't afford it. He could only bid 250 million. Any more and he couldn't afford it. If it's in your life, you'll get it. If it's not in your life, don't force it. This sentence emerged in Tan Xiu's mind as he finally smiled bitterly. He used to be very rich. As long as he fancied something, there was almost nothing he couldn't buy. Therefore, he was very clear about the power of money. But now, he had to start all over again and was seriously short of funds. In the end, the Millennium Ginseng was obtained by the fat middle-aged man. The show is about to start. Miao Wentong, who was sitting next to Tan Xiu, was a bit excited as he whispered. Tan Xiu was surprised. The Millennium Ginseng is the most expensive item on the auction list. It should be the last one, right? Is there anything else that's not on the list? Miao Wentong whispered, Mr. Tang. Tan Xiu, you haven't participated in the Bauhinia auction before, so you don't know its rules. In every auction, there will be an item that's not on the list as the finale. I see. Tan Xiu was suddenly enlightened. He had some expectations for this last item. He didn't get the Millennium Ginseng. He didn't spend the money in his hand. Maybe the last item was what he needed. Suddenly, the lights in the auction venue were all turned off. Then, a beam of dim white light shone on the auctioneer from the top. Finally, on the wall behind the auctioneer, the projector projected an image. Chapter 98. In the gloomy auction venue, pairs of eyes were glued to the projector screen. It was a video. In the vast sea with turbulent waves, the islands were scattered like stars in the sky, like inlaid gems. A soaring eagle swooped down toward an isolated island. The isolated island was very large, tens of square kilometers in area. Undulating mountains, lush trees, beautiful birdsong, fragrant flowers, and colorful butterflies frolicking on the peaks. At the highest peak in the center of the island was a majestic castle full of European style. The flat road branched into 3 roads at the top of the mountain. One led to the castle, one led to the nearby parking lot, and the last one led to the helipad. Looking at the isolated island from above, one would be surprised to find that there were 9 hills extending thousands of meters into the sea. At the end of each hill was a European-style pavilion. Following the mountain path down to the sea, there was a private pier where passenger ships were anchored. 9 dragons spitting pearl. How is this possible? Tan Xiu's pupils shrunk and his eyes were filled with disbelief. His body slightly trembled at this moment, and his heart was like a raging storm. He once had an excellent feng shui treasure land when he was in the immortal world. The heaven and earth spiritual qi there was rich, and the spiritual energy in the earth vein was abundant. Cultivating there would definitely yield twice the results with half the effort. And that place was called the 9 Dragons Spitting Pearl Secret Domain. The video ended. The lights in the auction venue were turned on again. The auctioneer smiled and said, "This video is the last item for today's auction. It's 9 Dragons Island in the Pacific Ocean, and its neighboring island is South Bird Island. The distance between the two is 2,000 nautical miles. This private island was originally owned by the owner of a European consortium. But unfortunately, the island has just been developed for 2.5 years, and the owner of the consortium had to sell it due to special reasons. It just so happens that the big boss of our auction has a good relationship with the owner of the island, so he entrusted the auction to us. The guests who are qualified to participate in the Bauhinia auction are the real tycoons in the country. I'm sure many people will be interested in this feng shui treasure land. So, I won't waste any more time. The auction of this private island will now begin. Its base price is 500 million, and each increment must be no less than 10 million. The bidding begins now." As the auctioneer's voice fell, the hundreds of people participating in the auction below started whispering. After all, This was a transaction worth at least 500 million. Although they were all very rich, 500 million was not a small amount to them. This island is not bad. Miao Wentong had a smile on his face, but he had no intention of bidding. He glanced at Tan Xiu and then turned his head to another direction. He looked at Xiao Mingjin and asked with a smile, "If I remember correctly, you're planning to buy a house abroad. How was it? Are you interested?" Xiao Mingjin was silent for a moment. He slowly shook his head and said, "The base price of this private island is indeed not high. If he could get it for 500 million, he would be able to make some money even if he sold it after buying it. But everyone knows this problem. So, I think even 1 billion won't necessarily be enough to buy it. I'm not a tycoon, so I can't compare to you. So, I'll start being a bystander." Miao Wentong couldn't help laughing and said, "If you really want to buy it, I can lend it to you. I can't take out more than that, but 1 billion is still within my means." Xiao Mingjin said with a smile, "I'll take a look first." Tan Xiu stood up and walked to the back corner of the auction venue. He then dialed a cell number. Star City. Chen Zhizhong, who had just bought a villa in Southgate Town, was sitting cross-legged in the study room as he earnestly practiced the cultivation technique taught to him by Tang Xiu. He used to be a cultivator, but what he cultivated was true qi, which was very different from immortal cultivation techniques. However, there were thousands of great daos, but all roads lead to the same destination. Because of his previous foundation, he was working hard to transform his true qi into true essence. Ring, 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 his cell phone suddenly rang, causing Chen Zhizhong to wake up from his cultivation. Suddenly, an angry expression appeared on his face. He grabbed the cell phone and looked at the caller ID. The angry expression on his face instantly disappeared without a trace and was replaced with a bit of respect as he pressed the answer button. "Master, are you looking for me? I need money. The more, the better. How much money can you transfer in 10 minutes? Chen Zhizhong was silent for half a minute. His mind was constantly thinking. After half a minute, he said, "About 3 billion. Time is too tight. If you can give me half a day, I can get 5 billion or even more." Tan Xiu said, "I'll give you my account number. 10 minutes later, transfer 3 billion to my account." "All right." Chen Zhizhong complied. He no longer cared about his cultivation and began to make calls. Jingmen Island, auction venue. Xiao Mingjin and Miao Wentong were chatting together. Suddenly, they noticed that Tan Xiu had left his seat and immediately looked at each other in dismay. Tan Xiu had just left his seat to make a phone call. After he came back, he began to participate in the auction of the Millennium Ginseng. "Brother Miao, could it be that Tan Xiu wants to participate in the auction? Does he fancy that private island?" Xiao Mingjin's eyes flashed with a surprised expression as he asked in a low voice. Miao Wentong said in a low voice, "It's very likely." Look at his serious expression, I feel that this matter is most likely true. However, I really don't understand why he would run to the Pacific Ocean to buy a private island at such a young age. Could it be that he wants to move to that island and live a secluded life? Xiao Mingjin said with a forced smile, "I can't see through him. I really can't see through him. To be honest, Tan Xiu's age and appearance give me a strong contradictory feeling. I simply can't figure out how such a young man's words and actions don't have the slightest bit of a young man's attitude. On the contrary, he looks like a wise man with deep schemes. He's an evildoer." Miao Wentong said with certainty. Tan Xiu returned to his seat and quietly waited for the money to be transferred to his account. Although he could see the strange expression on Miao Wentong's and Xiao Mingjin's faces, he didn't explain. If the Millennium Ginseng was something he really wanted, then this private island was something he must get. Even if he had to snatch it, he must get his hands on it, 510 million. The nouveau riche fat middle-aged man was the first to bid 520 million. 550 million. In the last round of the auction, the number of people participating in the auction was relatively less compared to the previous rounds. But there were still more than a dozen people who were constantly increasing the price. Among them, the one who bid the most jubilant was the fat middle-aged man wearing the golden chain. After 7 or 8 minutes, the price had climbed to 1.48 billion. 1.5 billion. A trace of sweat appeared on the fat middle-aged man's forehead as he still shouted. 2 billion. Another old man, who was over 70 years old, raised the card in his hand and shouted. The fat middle-aged man suddenly turned his head. His eyes were brimming with anger as he stared at the old man. After gasping for a few times, he shouted again, 1 billion. At this price, only the old man and the fat middle-aged man were still bidding. The old man was expressionless, as if he turned a blind eye to the anger on the fat middle-aged man's face. He once again bid, 2 billion. 3 billion. The fat middle-aged man's voice was somewhat hoarse, but he still persisted. However, what made him turn angry was that the old man silently shook his head and no longer bid. Phew! The fat middle-aged man wiped the sweat on his forehead and secretly breathed a sigh of relief. He had actually reached his limit and would have to give up if he increased the price again. A smile appeared on the corner of the auctioneer's mouth. His eyes flickered as he smilingly said, the price of 9 Dragons Island has now climbed to 3 billion. It's indeed a terrifying number, but I think there should be some people who haven't bid yet. After all, a private island of tens of square kilometers has been developed and constructed. If it's properly utilized, it will definitely be a paradise on Earth, a kingdom of its own. There are no laws in the real world on 9 Dragons Island. Whoever owns the entire island will be the king of this land, the one with the most power. If the owner of 9 Dragons Island is willing, he can apply internationally to establish a new country. This place is a dream, a paradise. I want to ask, is there anyone else who wants to increase the price? Is there anyone else who wants to become the owner of 9 Dragons Island? The entire auction venue fell into a dead silence. Everyone was watching each other. They were incited by the auctioneer's words and their emotions had been completely stirred. Yet, they couldn't come up with so much liquid capital. Otherwise, it would have a very serious impact on their career, and it would be a huge blow to their foundation. They were tempted. But they were helpless. This was the truest portrayal of their hearts. A trace of disappointment was revealed on the auctioneer's beautiful face. Although the price of 3 billion had exceeded her expectation, she still hoped that this island could be sold at a higher price. On the contrary, the fat middle-aged man was the exact opposite. A smile appeared on his face, and he even looked a bit proud. His eyes swept over the last old man who bid against him, and then subconsciously glanced at Tan Xiu. 5 billion. Tan Xiu's voice echoed in the auction venue. In an instant, everyone in the entire auction venue revealed a strange expression. No one thought that Tan Xiu, who couldn't even buy a millennium ginseng, would unexpectedly bid for this private island. Moreover, he even bid a sky-high price. Did he have that much money? Where did he get such courage from? And, who was he? Questions surged in everyone's heart. Miao Wentong, Xiao Mingzhen, and even the sage-like Dao Master Zi, who was sitting next to Tan Xiu, were shocked by Tan Xiu's big move. They looked at Tan Xiu with disbelief. They didn't expect that Tan Xiu would actually be able to come up with so much money. Xiao Mingzhen gently touched Miao Wentong and said in a low voice, "You advise him not to mess around here. The big boss behind this auction is very powerful. We absolutely can't afford to provoke him." Chapter 99. Miao Wentong's lips squirmed as he secretly sighed inside. Then, he pulled Tan Xiu's sleeve and whispered, "Tang. Tan Xiu, this auction is not a joke. If you don't have enough money and lie about the price, not only will you get a huge compensation, but you'll also get a heavy blow from the auction house. The organizer of this Bauhinia auction, the big shot behind the scenes, has a very terrifying strength. Tan Xiao glanced at the short message displayed on his mobile screen. The corner of his mouth curved into an arc as he lightly smiled and said, "Don't do porcelain work if you don't have a diamond. Don't worry about it." Miao Wentong opened his mouth and finally gave up. He felt that Tan Xiao couldn't afford that much money. Even if Tan Xiao was very powerful, he was still too young. Even if his family was rich, it was impossible for him to mobilize too much money. In the front row, the smile and complacency on the fat middle-aged man's face froze in a flash. He turned his head with difficulty and directly jumped from his chair when he saw Tan Xiao, shouting, "Nonsense! He's deliberately making trouble. I don't believe he can afford 2.5 billion to buy an island." His words were approved by the majority of the people in the auction venue, and the sound of discussion resounded again. "Yeah. How old is he? He hasn't even grown his hair yet, right? How could he afford 2.5 billion to buy an island? This auction is not a joke. Doesn't he know the consequences of lying about the price? Young people nowadays. They're really unreliable. Buying 9 Dragons Island isn't for 250,000, nor 2.5 million. That's 2.5 billion. There are so many people here, and I'm afraid 4/5 of their personal assets won't even reach this amount. Did this brat's head get kicked by a donkey? That fat man snatched the millennium-old ginseng from his hand before, yet he actually harbors a grudge and deliberately raised the price now. Can't he see that the fat man has reached his limit and can't increase the price anymore? What a stupid guy. I really don't know what he's thinking. He's actually playing such a big joke for the sake of fighting back. If that fat man doesn't increase the price anymore, he'll probably be in a difficult position. Idiot. Tan Xiao's hearing was sharp, and he could clearly hear the discussions around him. However, he did not explain, but the smile on his face slowly faded. At this moment, the auctioneer Xiao Ai's heart was filled with worry. She knew that if Tan Xiao obtained the right to purchase 9 Dragons Island in the end, but he couldn't come up with that much money, the auction would be considered a failure. Not only would she not receive any commission, but her status in the auction would also plummet. But she was also aware of one thing. During the auction, she had no right to inquire about the amount of funds Tan Xiao had. What to do? The auctioneer, Xiao Ai, looked at the fat middle-aged man with a headache and then looked at Tan Xiao. The fat middle-aged man glared at Tan Xiao and shouted again, "Auctioneer, I suggest that brat show his proof of funds. Otherwise, not only will your auction house's reputation be tarnished, but it will also disappoint the guests who come to your auction house." The auctioneer shot a deep look at Tan Xiao and finally helplessly said to the fat middle-aged man, "I'm really sorry, sir. I don't have the right to do that." Tan Xiao didn't even look at the fat middle-aged man and instead spoke to the auctioneer, "I'd like to ask you something. Someone caused trouble in the auction. What measures will your auction house take? For example, a certain fat man who can't afford to lose and is desperate to do something. You're courting death, brat." The fat middle-aged man was burning with anger as he glared at Tan Xiao and roared. The auctioneer, Xiao Ai, cursed inwardly. She quickly stepped forward a few steps and said aloud, "Sir, regardless of whether he can afford it or not, he has already bid and our auction house will trade with him. Also, since he has bid, the rest is between our auction house and him. You have no right to interfere. Please sit down, we'll continue the auction. I'd like to ask if you still want to increase the price." The fat middle-aged man's face turned red. He was full of anger but had nowhere to vent it. Although he had a bit of background and strength, he didn't dare to go against this auction house. With no other choice, he could only swallow his anger and sit in silence. The auctioneer, Xiao Ai, felt relieved inwardly. She was a bit disappointed to see that the fat middle-aged man didn't bid again, but she still said, "The current bidding price of 9 Dragons Island is 2.5 billion. Is there a higher price? If not, this 9 Dragons Island will belong to that handsome gentleman later." No one spoke. All eyes were on Tan Xiu, waiting for the result. I hereby announce that the owner of 9 Dragons Island is this handsome gentleman. Please take your ID and follow me to the backstage to handle the transaction procedures. The auctioneer, Xiao Ai, stared fixedly at Tan Xiu and spoke with a face full of expectation. Tan Xiu got up and walked toward the backstage of the auction venue. The fat middle-aged man also abruptly got up. He glared at Tan Xiu with resentment and shouted, "Hey guys, don't go yet. Let's go and have a look. I wanna see if a brat who hasn't even grown his hair can take out 2.5 billion. Yeah. Let's go and have a look. Alright. Let's see the result. Alright. Let's go." No one chose to leave and instead swarmed toward the backstage. They wanted to know if Tan Xiu could take out so much money. If he could, they also wanted to witness this sky-high transaction. Miao Wentong and Xiao Mingzhen smiled wryly as they followed the crowd toward the backstage. If it was 1.8 billion, the two of them could pool the money and help Tan Xiu pay in advance. But it was a huge sum of 2.5 billion. It would be very difficult for the two of them to take out such a huge sum. At the backstage of the auction venue, the steward already knew the cause and effect of the matter. His eyes swept over the crowd and finally landed on Tan Xiu. He then said with a smile, "Congratulations, Mr. Tang." Tan Xiu nodded. He handed over his bank card and said, "All right. Transfer the money." The steward took the bank card and called his assistants to quickly handle the transfer. After 2.5 billion was transferred, he immediately asked his assistants to help Tan Xiu with the transaction procedures, filling in the purchase contract, and other matters. Really, can he really afford it? The fat middle-aged man was dumbfounded. Those people who previously ridiculed Tan Xiu in private were also dumbfounded. They stared blankly at Tan Xiu as he quickly handled the various procedures under the guidance of the staff. They looked at each other in dismay as an awkward expression appeared on their faces. What was slapping the face? Tonight's auction was slapping the face. The fat middle-aged man was so ashamed that he wanted to find a hole to drill into. Those people also felt as if a pair of invisible palms were ruthlessly slapping their faces. Even Miao Wentong and Xiao Mingzhen were secretly flabbergasted and endlessly ashamed. The Chinese Redbud auction came to a successful end. After Tan Xiu had handled the various procedures, a large number of guests came to greet him. These people's status and background in the country were very strong. Even if Tan Xiu's EQ was very poor, he still didn't want to easily offend them. After reluctantly dealing with them, he immediately left with Miao Wentong, Xiao Mingzhen, and Dao Master Zi. Half an hour later, in the presidential suite on the top floor of the Jarvis Hotel, Tan Xiu returned the 80 million yuan he borrowed from Jia Ruidao. He also called Chen Zhizhong's bank account and transferred the remaining 500 million yuan to him. Therefore, Tan Xiu's account still had 90 million yuan left. 2.5 billion yuan in debt. After dealing with these matters, Tan Xiu couldn't help but smack his lips. As the saying goes, lice are not afraid of being bitten, debts are not enough to worry about. But this sentence was very inappropriate for Tan Xiu. He was a person who could clearly distinguish between kindness and grudges, as well as public and private affairs. Although Chen Zhizhong was his registered disciple, personal affection didn't mean that they shared private property. That money also didn't mean that Chen Zhizhong was filial to him. I must speed up the speed of making money. Tan Xiu went to the window and looked at the starry night sky. His mind was filled with all kinds of thoughts. After a long time, he remembered something. He left the suite and knocked on the door of the presidential suite next door. In the next suite, Miao Wentong and Xiao Mingzhen didn't directly go to rest. They were in the brightly lit living room, smoking and chatting. "Brother Xiao, I'm very interested in Tan Xiu's identity now. But the more I investigate, the more mysterious he is. Mysterious to an unbelievable degree. Miao Wentong puffed out a smoke ring and faintly said. Xiao Mingjin forced a smile and said, "You're not the only one who has this feeling. I also feel the same. According to the information I got, Tan Xiu comes from an ordinary family. He belongs to a single-parent family, and he doesn't have any big background. What I can't believe the most is that he had a car accident, causing him to be muddle-headed for a year. According to the investigation information, he was like a fool that year. But how can a fool do such sensational things?" Miao Wentong nodded and said, "His life background is as simple as a piece of white paper. Even if some color has been added recently, it's only recently that he has some relationship with the Long family in Star City. What I want to know the most is his master's background. But according to the investigation information, there are no clues at all." Xiao Mingjin nodded and sighed, "Yes. He also wants to know who his master is. He wanted to know which terrifying big shot was able to train such a powerful young talent. And tonight, he had spent a total of 2.56 billion. This amount is a huge sum of money for us, but he can easily get it. I'm also very curious about the source of this money." Miao Wentong's expression moved as he asked, "How about I ask someone to check it? I should be able to find the source of the money." Xiao Mingjin shook his head seriously, "Don't. For Tan Xiu to be able to get so much money, it shows that there's definitely a powerful figure behind him that we don't know. In case we send someone to investigate him, I'm afraid he'll be very angry. I'm afraid the little friendship we have with him will be broken." "Alas. It's true." Miao Wentong sighed helplessly. Xiao Mingjin slowly said, "Let's not delve into the matter of Tan Xiu's identity. The most important thing now is that we're clear about one thing: the advantages of having a good relationship with him outweigh the disadvantages. Tomorrow's trip to the Evil Dragon Sea area will be a good opportunity for us to fight side by side. We must seize this opportunity. It's also a good opportunity to get rich." Miao Wentong grinned upon hearing it. Chapter 100. Knock, knock. The sound of knocking on the door interrupted their conversation. Both of them looked at each other and looked suspicious. They didn't know who would knock on the door so late at night. "Tan Xiu, you haven't slept yet?" Miao Wentong opened the door and was surprised to see Tan Xiu standing outside. Tan Xiu said, "There's something I want to ask you. Come in and talk." Miao Wentong said with a smile. Quickly, Tan Xiu sat in front of Miao Wentong and Xiao Mingjin and said, "Two gentlemen, can you tell me your identity? After all, we're going to the Evil Dragon Sea area tomorrow and we need to fight side by side. But I know nothing about you." Miao Wentong said with a smile, "I'm Haiqing's Miao family's patriarch and also the Miao Group's CEO. My master is Daoist and Hui. He passed away more than 10 years ago. I'm a rogue cultivator." Xiao Mingjin said, "I'm just an idle person who started a venture capital company. I was originally a martial artist. Later, I accidentally obtained half of an ancient cultivation manual and then embarked on the path of cultivation." Tan Xiu nodded and said, "I'm a student, and I'm about to take the college entrance test. Stepping on the path of cultivation is very complicated, so I'll tell you later." Upon hearing Tan Xiu's words, the two of them were a bit disappointed in their hearts. However, the two of them were smart people, so they didn't get to the bottom of it. Tan Xiu said the purpose of disturbing them and humbly asked, "Both of you are people who have been in the society for many years, and your identity is very unusual. So, I want to ask you too, how about managing a private island?" The two of them looked at each other in dismay. Although their identity was unusual, they didn't own a private island. How would they know how to manage it? Tan Xiu was surprised and said, "Both of you don't know?" Cough, cough. Miao Wentong coughed a few times and said with a forced smile, "We really don't know. But I think it shouldn't be difficult to manage a private island. Nowadays, it's easy to get things done with money. You can hire a professional butler with a lot of money and let him take care of everything on the private island." "Butler?" Tan Xiu slapped his forehead and sighed inwardly. He had been smart all his life, but he had been muddle-headed this time. When he was in the immortal world, he had a very good butler who followed him for more than 6,000 years. The butler was usually the one who took care of his personal matters in his domain. However, this candidate, Tan Xiu, had a headache. It was right to hire a housekeeper, but where could he find a loyal and capable housekeeper? And he had to stay on an isolated island in the Pacific Ocean? Miao Wentong looked at Tan Xiu's expression and understood Tan Xiu's thoughts. He asked tentatively, "How about I help you find one? An English butler is the best. As long as you have enough money, you can definitely hire the most famous butler in the world." Tan Xiu shook his head and said, "Forget it. Let's talk about this later." The next day, a cargo ship anchored at Jingmen Island's port anchored and set sail. This cargo ship was obtained by Miao Wentong. He had some connections in Jingmen Island and could use it to transport fierce beast carcasses. On the cargo ship, apart from several crew members and 2 chefs, there were only Tan Xiu's group of 4. The blue sea was clear and the cool breeze was blowing gently. Tan Xiu came to the stern alone. He sat cross-legged on the deck and silently cultivated the heavenly art of cosmic genesis. Even though it was daytime, he could still absorb a trace of starlight. In his body, the 9 stars quietly floated, releasing resplendent rays of light, absorbing the surging star energy. Huh? Tan Xiu's expression suddenly moved while he was cultivating. He found that the star force he absorbed didn't come with the power of flames. But today, the sun was shining brightly. Many of the star force he absorbed came from the sun, and there was a trace of scorching heat in it. Heaven and earth are divided into yin and yang, and the universe is divided into 2 poles. Yin and yang fuse together to create perfection. Just as this thought emerged in Tan Xiu's mind, the star force he absorbed into his body began to crazily churn like boiling water. The 9 stars changed as the yin and yang pattern arranged themselves into a formation, causing the boiling star force to undergo a qualitative change. The fog-like star force was swallowed by the 9 stars at the same time as a gray airflow spurted out. This airflow was easily controlled by Tan Xiu. After it was channeled into his meridians, it began to surge crazily according to the circulation route of the heavenly art of cosmic genesis. Hiss! Tan Xiu's body violently trembled as a heart-wrenching pain gushed out from his meridians. His meridians were like thin pieces of paper that were easily torn apart. Then, the gray airflow filled, nourished, and repaired them. As more and more gray airflow poured in, his meridians that had just been repaired began to swell, tear, and then be repaired again. Again and again. It was an endless cycle. Tan Xiu forgot about the time and everything in the world. He had suffered countless pain before, but he dared to swear that he had never encountered such terrible pain. At first, the pain only came from his meridians and flesh, but as time passed, the pain seemed to be everywhere. Even in the deepest part of his soul, there was an indescribable pain. In the depths of the vast universe, tens of thousands of stars vibrated at the same time. Even those previously dim and lusterless stars formed a halo on the surface. Moreover, the forming force outside the halo was like a large net that spread rapidly toward the direction of Earth. Layers upon layers, innumerable. Boom! The radiant sun, at this moment, shone brightly on Earth, and the temperature also increased by more than 10 degrees in just 7 or 8 breaths. What's going on? What happened? In every corner of Earth, hundreds of millions of people raised their heads to look at the sky, revealing a puzzled look. In the South China Sea. On the cargo ship that Tan Xiu was on, all the crew members and chefs revealed a confused look. The rolling heat wave caused thick sweat to appear on their bodies. Moreover, they could clearly feel that the surrounding temperature was getting higher and higher. It's going to be so hot that I'll die. Too weird. What happened? The thermometer shows that it's already 37 degrees. Damn, the temperature is still rising, 38 degrees. 39 degrees, what the hell is going on? Is it the end of the world? The temperature has risen to 40 degrees. What should we do? Do we continue to sail to the deep sea? Wait. In the cargo ship's cabin, Dao Master Z, Miao Wentong, and Xiao Mingjin gathered together and quickly rushed out of the cabin. When their figures appeared on the deck, they looked up at the sun in the blue sky and suddenly revealed a horrified look. The first time. This was the first time they saw such a big sun, and it was the first time they felt the abnormality of the sun. Like a torrential wave of heat falling from the sky, the temperature of the air above the sea was getting higher and higher. Spiritual energy fluctuation. Suddenly, the three people's complexion changed. They were all cultivators, so they could keenly sense the spirit qi in the air surging towards the stern of the ship. They could also sense a huge amount of spirit qi churning at the stern of the ship. Let's go! Miao Wentong shouted. His figure was as fast as lightning as he instantly rushed toward the stern. However, when the three people sprinted to the stern deck, their eyes burst with disbelief. 3 pairs of eyes were firmly locked on Tan Xiu. It's him. Miao Wentong's lips squirmed as he looked at Tan Xiu as if he had seen a ghost. If it was someone else, perhaps he could reluctantly accept it. But the person who created this heaven and earth anomaly turned out to be Tan Xiu. Even if he saw it with his own eyes, he still couldn't accept it. Xiao Mingjin's body trembled as he raised his trembling arm with difficulty. He pointed at Tan Xiu and involuntarily said, how did he do it? This scene is too terrifying, right? The temperature is still rising, this temperature, not good. We can withstand this temperature, but the crew on the ship can't bear it. Miao Wentong was like waking up from a dream. His complexion paled as he rushed toward Tan Xiu to stop him. Don't! Dao Master Z's eyes flashed as he instantly blocked in front of Miao Wentong and whispered, don't disturb him. To him, this might be a great opportunity. Let's send the crew out first and then come back. Miao Wentong and Xiao Mingjin quickly exchanged glances and tacitly nodded. They then used their movement technique to quickly rush into the cabin. After they asked if there was a spare boat on the ship, they immediately took the crew and the chef to board the boat and sailed toward the distance. Half an hour later, with the help of the lifebuoy, the 3 of them returned to the cargo ship. Dao Master Z, what should we do next? The temperature dozens of nautical miles away is not as high as here, but it's still close to 40 degrees. And the temperature here is at least 50 degrees. If this continues, I'm afraid even the 3 of us won't be able to bear it. Miao Wentong stood on the top of the ship more than 20 meters away from Tan Xiu as he spoke with a wry smile. Cultivate. A strange expression appeared on Dao Master Z's face as his finger streaked across the void in front of him. Miao Wentong and Xiao Mingjin frowned at the same time. Cultivate? At this time? Cultivate here? Are you kidding me? Dao Master Z sat cross-legged and whispered, what are you doing? Don't tell me you want to give up such a good opportunity to cultivate. The temperature here is very high, but it's still bearable for us. Both of you are experts who have been cultivating for decades. Don't tell me you can't sense the concentration of spiritual qi in the air. Miao Wentong and Xiao Mingjin's body shook as a look of ecstasy appeared on their faces. That's right. They indeed felt the rich spiritual qi in the air. Even the concentration of spiritual qi here was more than 10 times richer than other places. Cultivating under such conditions was many times faster than their usual cultivation speed. Cultivate. The 2 of them immediately sat cross-legged and began to cultivate. They didn't want to miss this God-given opportunity. Both of them were cultivation geniuses. They had benefited a lot from the 1000 revolution array. They had long wanted to calm down and cultivate well, striving to break through another realm. Chapter 101. Imperial Capital. The skyscrapers were like giants stepping on the earth, with the blue sky above their heads. In one of the buildings, Andy pushed open the door of an office in her high heels. She was only 1.58 meters tall, but she looked like a doll, delicate and cute. The twin peaks in front of her chest were majestic and spectacular. Childish face. Atsundara lowly. Andy came to the desk with a folder in his arms. He knocked on the desk and said, "Boss, the test results are out." Behind the desk, Kang Xia suddenly got up and took the folder from Andy while asking in a deep voice, "What's the result?" Andy said, "There are no harmful substances. It has very strong Chinese medicine ingredients." Really? Kang Xia's face lit up and she quickly opened the folder. Andy sat down on the chair in front of the desk and giggled, "Of course it's true. It was clearly stated on the inspection report. In addition, according to your instructions, I have already registered the company at the Bureau of Industry and Commerce." The legal representative was Tan Xiu. "As for the shares, you'll need to sign it in private." Kang Xia's eyes gleamed with wisdom. After reading the document, she said in a deep voice, "We can withdraw from here. The new company's HQ will be set up in Star City. Our preliminary work is to recruit researchers in the field of cosmetics, rent the factory, register the trademark, and package the two products. Within 2 months, the company must be set up and all the preliminary work must be ready." "Okay." Andy made a "no problem" gesture and said with a sweet smile, "After resting for a few months, we can start working again. I think Jack and Cruz will be jumping for joy, praising God and praising our future big boss." With excitement and fighting spirit, Kang Xia replied, "Big boss is very interesting, very interesting. Except for the moment when I stepped into the workplace, I was very excited and full of fighting spirit." Since then, he had never felt this way again. At this moment, this feeling has returned. Andy was very curious about the man who was going to be her boss. Looking at Kang Xia's fighting spirit, she curiously asked, "Boss, shouldn't you contact the boss? It seems that you haven't given him a definite answer yet, have you?" Kang Xia's expression froze. She then took out her mobile and smilingly said, I forgot about this. Contact him now." After a while, a bit of anger was revealed on Kang Xia's face as she threw the mobile phone on the desk and said, "The call can't be connected. I'll contact him again tonight. Get ready to finish everything we have to do in the imperial capital as soon as possible. We'll rush to Star City in 2 days." "Okay." Andy jumped up from his chair and dashed out of the room. In the South Sea, the cargo ship, which had already stopped sailing, was shrouded in torrential heat waves. Within a radius of dozens of kilometers, a large number of fish fled in all directions. At this moment, Tan Xiu's mind was completely clear as he continuously cultivated according to the heavenly art of cosmic genesis. Although the 9 stars were motionless, they were constantly absorbing the spirit chi from all directions and the power of the stars surging in from the universe. Absorb. Transfer the message. Tang Xiu named the gray substance that was eventually formed as star force. Star power was like the true essence cultivated by cultivators and the immortal essence cultivated by immortal cultivators. It was the foundation of a cultivator, the source of energy. In Tan Xiu's meridians, the surging star power expanded the width of his meridians and tempered their toughness. The process was painful, but the result made Tan Xiu feel happy. More than 10 meters away from Tan Xiu on the top of the ship, Dao Master Zi, Miao Wentong, and Xiao Mingjun were also sitting cross-legged in cultivation, desperately absorbing the spirit qi from all directions. Although their absorption speed was very fast, it was simply a drop in the bucket compared to the rich spirit qi all around. It was not worth mentioning. Pop, Miao Wentong was the first to open his eyes. His eyes were filled with an intense pleasant surprise as he looked at Tan Xiu with a grateful expression. He had a breakthrough. He had been stuck at the previous stage for nearly 2 years. In these 2 years, no matter how hard he cultivated, he was always unable to break through. Even the legendary heavenly abode probably can't compare to the spirit qi concentration here, right? Miao Wentong's heart was filled with satisfaction as he secretly praised. Half an hour later, Xiao Mingjun also woke up from his cultivation. Because of the breakthrough in his cultivation, he was also filled with ecstasy. He was also deeply grateful to Tan Xiu. You also broke through. Miao Wentang's expression moved as he asked in a low voice. Xiao Mingjin was surprised. Don't tell me you also. Miao Wentang heavily nodded and said, cultivating in an environment with rich spirit qi is indeed twice the result with half the effort. After being stuck for 2 years, I've finally broken through. Xiao Mingjin turned his head to look at Tan Xiu and said with a smile, we owe Tan Xiu a big favor. If it weren't for him, we simply don't know when we would have broken through. Yeah. Miao Wentang agreed. I originally thought that I would need at least a few years to break through. I didn't expect that I would break through now. Soon. Dao Master Zi also woke up from his cultivation. With a grateful expression in his eyes, he swept over Tan Xiu and finally landed on Miao Wentang and Xiao Mingjin. He then said with a smile, congratulations to the 2 benefactors. Miao Wentang said with a smile, it should be the same. Dao Master Zi said with a smile, that's right. If it weren't for Benefactor Tang, I'm afraid this poor Daoist wouldn't have been able to break through in such a short time. But, I really don't understand what kind of cultivation technique Benefactor Tang is practicing, to actually create such a big scene. In the evening, the sun set in the west, and the sunset glow reflected the western sky and sea. The scorching heat of the day also gradually receded. Tan Xiu's eyelashes fluttered as he woke up from his cultivation. You guys, seeing the 3 people nearby, Tan Xiu suddenly revealed a confused expression. Miao Wentang's figure flashed and appeared in front of Tan Xiu. With a bright smile on his face, he said, we've already finished our cultivation and we're waiting for you to wake up from it. I originally thought that you would need a few more days to finish your cultivation, but I didn't expect that you'd finish it now. Tan Xiu got up and said, my mind was enlightened, so I took a long time to cultivate. Have we arrived at the Evil Dragon Sea area? No. Miao Wentang forced a smile and shook his head. How long have I been cultivating? Tan Xiu asked with a puzzled expression. It's already evening now. Why haven't we arrived at the Evil Dragon Sea area? Didn't you say that it's only 1,000 nautical miles? Pointing to the sea, Miao Wentang was at a loss whether he had to laugh or cry as he said, haven't you noticed that the cargo ship has stopped? If you don't finish, the 3 of us are going to send some things to the sailors dozens of nautical miles away. What's going on? Tan Xiu didn't know that he was cultivating, so he curiously asked. After a while, listening to Miao Wentang and Xiao Mingjin's description, Tan Xiu was tongue-tied and was overwhelmed with emotions. Even in his dreams, he had never thought that he would create such a big heaven and earth phenomenon. That's right. My cultivation. Tan Xiu immediately calmed down and observed the situation inside his body. The 9 stars had become much more lustrous than before. The lustrous rays of light illuminated the space inside his dantian. Around the 9 stars, a large amount of gray star force surged, connecting every unblocked meridian in his body. Moreover, his bones, tendons, organs, and muscles were all quenched. Whether it was flexibility or strength, all had a qualitative leap. It was as if every part of his body was full of explosive power. As a supreme immortal in the immortal world, his perception of power was particularly accurate. He could feel the degree of his current strength with a light wave of his fist. 3,000 jin. He nodded his head in satisfaction. 6,000 pounds of strength was double his previous strength. Originally, he had to reach the peak of the skin strengthening stage to have 3,000 jin of power. Now, he had not yet broken through the skin strengthening stage, but he already had a powerful strength. If I reach the peak of the skin strengthening stage, how much will my strength increase? Tan Xiu was secretly looking forward to it. An hour later, the 4 of them used the GPS device to find the starving crew and the chef, and brought them back to the cargo ship. Regarding today's phenomenon, the 4 of them didn't explain. They just told them that after this matter was over, they would double their reward. The next evening, the cargo ship rushed to the Evil Dragon Sea area and found the small channel in the middle of the 3 islands. However, because it was already late, they didn't immediately look for the fierce beasts. Instead, they ate and drank to their heart's content to conserve their energy and wait until tomorrow morning to act. The shadow of the moon danced as a chill came. Tan Xiu stood on the bow deck, overlooking the islands not far away. Deep in his heart, there was a sense of crisis. This sense of crisis was unclear, but it really existed. He felt that there were terrifying fierce beasts on the 3 islands. Those fierce beasts were absolutely not something he could provoke right now. Moreover, others might not be able to sense it, but he could feel that the death qi in the vicinity was much stronger than other places. It indicated that a lot of humans or beasts had died here. Immeasurable Tianzuan. Does Benefactor Tang want to go to the islands to have a look? Dao Master Zi silently appeared at Tang Xiu's side as he said with a smile. Tan Xiu shook his head and said, if I wait for a few years, maybe I'll go to these 3 islands. But now, I don't want to go, and I don't dare to go. Why do you say that? Dao Master Zi was confused. Tan Xiu indifferently said, these 3 islands are naturally formed feng shui great array. This array formation is ingenious and incomparably mysterious. If someone were to land on the island, it would be fine in the periphery. But once they go deeper, I'm afraid they won't be able to return. Is that true? Dao Master Zi originally wanted to land on the island to hunt. But when he heard Tan Xiu's words, he suddenly felt a sense of crisis. After all, Tan Xiu was able to break through the 6th layer of the 1000 revolution array. His attainments in arrays were absolutely terrifying. If what he said was true, then they really couldn't go deeper into these 3 islands. Really? Tan Xiu calmly said. Dao Master Zi was silent for a long time before he forced a smile and said, if that's the case, then we can only move around the periphery. In fact, this poor Taoist learned from the ancient books that the fierce beasts on these 3 islands are much higher than those in the channel. Chapter 102. With both hands behind his back, Tan Xiu calmly said, you must act according to your capabilities. High-level fierce beasts may be more beneficial for us, but we must be alive to enjoy them. That's right. Dao Master Zi lightly flicked his horsetail whisk with a face full of approval. He was very old and had lived for a very long time. He had seen countless people who sacrificed their lives for treasures. Just like the common saying in the secular world, money is a good thing, but having the life to earn it but not having the life to spend it is the saddest thing. He was silent for a moment before he looked at Tan Xiu and said, Benefactor Tang, there is a question in this poor Taoist's mind that has been bothering me for several days. I don't know if this poor Taoist should ask it or not. Tan Xiu said, there's no harm in asking. Dao Master Zi asked, Benefactor Tang's cultivation should not be high, but how could you cause such a terrifying phenomenon yesterday? This poor Taoist has read a lot of documents and ancient books. There are also many records about cultivators, but none of them can cause such a phenomenon. Tan Xiu said, I don't know. Dao Master Zi calmly looked at Tan Xiu for half a minute. Looking at Tan Xiu's expressionless face, he secretly sighed and said, since Benefactor Tang doesn't know, then forget it. This poor Taoist won't bother Benefactor Tang anymore. I'll go rest first. You won't be able to rest. Tan Xiu's eyes suddenly focused as he looked into the distance and lightly said. Dao Master Zi raised his eyebrows and asked, Benefactor Tang, why do you say that? Tan Xiu pointed to the distant sea and said, there are more than a dozen fierce beasts in the sea a kilometer away from us. Our cargo ship is docked on the shore, and it's obvious that the light on the ship has attracted them. Call Miao Wentong and Xiao Mingjin to come out. We need to lure those fierce beasts away. Dao Master Zi asked, why do we need to lure them away? If you want our identity as cultivators to be spread like wildfire, then go ahead and fight those fierce beasts in this vicinity, said Tang Xiu lightly. You can go all out and fight those fierce beasts here. Those crew members. When Dao Master Zi heard this, he immediately sobered up. Tan Xiu turned his head and looked at Dao Master Zi's back. Then, he returned to the cabin and took out the things he had prepared. Afterwards, he jumped down from the bow and lightly touched the sea surface with his toes. In just 2 breaths, his feet had already landed on the coastline. His speed was very fast. After traveling 10,000 meters along the coastline, he immediately began to set up a formation. Before coming. After he finished drawing the talismans, he also prepared a lot of jade stones as the foundation of the array. In fact, even before he arrived, he had already thought of the formation he was going to set up. Defensive array. Illusory array. Killing array. The combination of the 3 powers was the simplest and easiest formation to set up, the illusory killing formation. Setting up this kind of array formation did not require the assistance of spiritual sense, nor did it require a cultivation realm. If it was when he stood at the peak of the immortal world, he wouldn't need anything at all. With a wave of his hand, he would be able to inscribe formation markings in space and set up a grand formation with monstrous might in the blink of an eye. 2 minutes later. The illusory killing formation was successfully arranged by Tan Xiu, and half of the jade stones and talismans he had brought with him had been used up. Whoosh, Tan Xiu's figure flickered. When he returned to the cargo ship, he saw Dao Master Z and the other 2 standing side by side on the coastline. Dao Master Z was holding a horsetail whisk with a solemn expression, Miao Wentong was holding a long sword, looking as steady as Mount Tai, and Xiao Mingzhen was holding a long blade with a looming killing intent. 3 of you, what about those fierce beasts? Tan Xiu patrolled the sea area, but he didn't find any trace of fierce beasts. Miao Wentong pointed at the sea in front of him and said, they have sunk and haven't launched an attack for the time being. All the crew members have fallen asleep, so I've turned off the electric switch on the entire ship. They can only guess the position of the cargo ship, so they didn't attack in time. Tan Xiu said, what kind of fierce beasts are those? A trace of a wry smile appeared on Miao Wentong's face as he said, white alligator. It's a pack of white alligators. White alligator. With a puzzled expression, Tan Xiu looked at Miao Wentong and asked, are these fierce beasts very powerful? Is their grade high? He was in the immortal world, so he knew that fierce beasts were divided into grades. But he didn't know if the fierce beasts on Earth were divided into grades or not. Miao Wentong said, second-class fierce beasts. They're very powerful. If I encounter a second-class fierce beast, I might still have the strength to fight. But if I encounter 2 or 3 of them, I'm afraid I can only run away. Tan Xiu said, explain to me the classification of fierce beasts. You don't know? Miao Wentong asked in astonishment. Tan Xiu shook his head and said, I don't know. Miao Wentong said, fierce beasts are divided into 3 grades. Fierce beasts that have just opened their spiritual wisdom, and their strength and speed have increased sharply are first-class fierce beasts, also known as junior fierce beasts. Fierce beasts that have the spiritual wisdom of 7 to 8 years old children are second-class fierce beasts. A second-class fierce beast can easily kill dozens of first-class fierce beasts. Third-class fierce beasts with mature spiritual wisdom are absolutely terrifying existences. They are few in number, and their attack power is astonishing. Even if I and Brother Xiao join forces, I'm afraid we're not a match for a third-class fierce beast. I've never encountered a third-class fierce beast. I've only encountered a second-class fierce beast twice. At that time, my cultivation was not high, so I ran away twice. Dao Master Z shook his head and said, there are also fourth-class fierce beasts. I've read the information about fourth-class fierce beasts in ancient books. In history, there were several records of fourth-class fierce beasts wreaking havoc in the world. Fourth-class fierce beasts can also become demonic beasts. Not only do they have terrifying strength and speed, but they can also call the wind and summon the rain, as well as release magical arts. Really? Miao Wentong and Xiao Mingzhen revealed a horrified expression. Dao Master Z said, indeed. Tan Xiu said, I understand. Let's pay attention to our vigilance. Once those white alligators appear, we'll immediately lead them to the coastline 10,000 meters away from the left side. I've already arranged an array over there. When the time comes, it will be a lot easier to hunt and kill them. All right. The trio was overjoyed. 10 minutes later, Tan Xiu's group of four's complexion changed. Because more than 20 white alligators appeared on the surface of the sea. These white alligators had snow-white bodies, and their size was several times bigger than an ordinary alligator. There are too many fierce beasts. We must not get entangled with them. We must lead them to the array arranged by Tan Xiu as soon as possible. Dao Master Zi said with a solemn expression. Xiao Mingjin leaped up. His figure was like a sharp arrow as he dashed toward those white alligators. The long blade in his hand fiercely slashed at the foremost white alligator more than 10 meters away. Boom, that white alligator had already noticed Xiao Mingjin pouncing on it. Its body quickly descended, trying to avoid Xiao Mingjin's attack. However, Xiao Mingjin's speed was extremely fast. His long blade split the sea surface and directly hit that white alligator's back. What made Xiao Mingjin's wrist numb was that his all-out attack was only able to break the white alligator's scales, giving it some injuries and not directly killing it. More than 20 nearby white alligators simultaneously locked their target on Xiao Mingjin and rushed toward him. Let's go. Xiao Mingjin didn't want to continue fighting and instantly retreated. Tan Xiu dashed forward and took out a yellow talisman from his hand. The moment Xiao Mingjin retreated to the shore, his star power flowed into the talisman along his arm. In an instant, the talisman flew out from his hand and turned into a lightning bolt 10 meters away from him. Then it struck the several white alligators that were chasing after him. Puff, 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 those few white alligators' scales were smashed by the lightning bolt as they screamed and howled. At the same time, several lightning bolts struck the sea surface. Because of the conduction of electricity in the water, the surrounding white alligators suddenly felt numb and their speed slowed down for a moment. Lightning talisman. Xiao Mingjin and the other two's complexion changed as they looked at Tan Xiu with fiery eyes. Although they were cultivators, they didn't know how to engrave talismans, let alone make the legendary lightning talisman. Don't just stand there. Those white alligators have been provoked. Lead them to the array I've arranged. Tan Xiu quickly retreated and moved toward the left side of the shore. Nearly 10 minutes later. The four of them spent a lot of effort to lead the 24 white alligators to the illusion-killing array 10 kilometers away. Tan Xiu was the first to step into the array. He shouted with a sinking tone, "The three of you follow behind me. Pay attention to my footprints and step on them." Understood. Although the three of them didn't know the might of the array arranged by Tan Xiu, they didn't dare to be careless. They followed Tan Xiu's instructions and entered the illusion-killing array. The 24 white alligators quickly crawled out of the sea. Their speed was extremely fast, several times faster than an ordinary person's full speed. In just a few breaths, they had already rushed into the array. Inside the illusion-killing array, Tan Xiu quickly told the three of them the most basic route of the array. Then, he flashed and hid in the core position. Although his strength had doubled, he was still not the opponent of these second-class fierce beasts. If he didn't use the lightning talisman, even if he could kill a white alligator, he would probably lose his life. In the array's core, Tan Xiu quietly stood there, looking at the white alligators that broke into the illusion-killing array. They were like headless flies scurrying in all directions. From his position, he could clearly see everything inside the illusion-killing array, but the others and the white alligators couldn't see him. Xiao Mingjin and Miao Wentang's fighting prowess was astonishing. Although Tan Xiu thought their moves were crude and they didn't know any fighting techniques, the two of them relied on their high cultivation and extremely powerful strength to join hands and continuously fight against the white alligators. Since the two of them knew the characteristics of the illusionary killing array's killing move, they completely followed Tang Xiu's instructions and didn't get attacked by the killing move of the illusionary killing array. But the white alligators didn't have such good luck. Inside the illusion killing array, a sword shadow appeared out of thin air. Each sword shadow swept by and added a wound to the white alligator. Dao Master Z constantly waved the horsetail whisk in his hand. Every time the horsetail whisk hit the white alligator, a dull, peng-peng sound would be heard. It could be determined that each of Dao Master Z's horsetail whisk's attack was extremely lethal. Half an hour later, all 24 white alligators were killed. Xiao Mingjin, Miao Wentong, and Dao Master Z also suffered some minor injuries. Tan Xiu removed the illusion-killing array and looked at the white alligators' corpses on the ground. A satisfied smile appeared on his face. According to their agreement, all the killed fierce beasts would be divided equally. In other words, he could get 6 white alligators' corpses. One must know that a second-class fierce beast's corpse could help him cultivate to the peak of the skin-strengthening stage. As for the remaining 5 white alligators' corpses, he believed that it should be enough for him to cultivate to the flesh-strengthening and bone-transforming stages. Chapter 103. Benefactor Tang, our luck is excellent. We've just arrived here and we've already killed so many second-class fierce beasts. I think it's almost enough. Should we go back now? Dao Master Z came before Tan Xiu. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and asked with a smile. Tan Xiu asked, don't we still need to look for precious ores? Dao Master Z forced a smile and said, if we want to look for precious ores, we need to go deep into the island. Benefactor Tang, aren't you afraid of encountering danger in the island? This, Tan Xiu stared blankly for a moment and immediately gave up the idea of looking for precious ores. Although it was said that nothing ventured, nothing gained. But if someone knew that they were going to die, then they were either mentally ill or sleepwalking. He was neither sick nor sleepwalking, so he wouldn't do something that would overestimate his own capabilities. At the very least. Not now. Tan Xiu was silent for a moment and then seriously said, such being the case, let's go back. We'll move the carcasses of these 24 white crocodiles back to the cargo ship first. Although Miao Wentong was injured, he was still immersed in excitement at the moment. Upon hearing Tan Xiu and Dao Master Z's words, he quickly said, are we going back like this? Although we've hunted 24 second-class fierce beasts, we've just arrived. It's too much of a pity to go back like this. I just talked with Brother Xiao. I think we should stay here for a few more days. If we find more fierce beasts, we can also kill a lot of them. Dao Master Z shook his head and said, it's our great luck to run into this flock of white crocodiles. Although there are fierce beasts in this evil dragon sea area, their numbers are not many. With the appearance of this flock of white crocodiles, I'm afraid it's very difficult for these fierce beasts to tolerate other fierce beasts here. If this poor Daoist's inference is correct, the other fierce beasts in this evil dragon sea area have been hunted or driven away by this flock of white crocodiles. This, Miao Wentong was speechless. If it was Tan Xiu who said this, perhaps he could refute one or two. After all, he thought that Tan Xiu was too young and had too little experience. But Dao Master Z was much older than him and had experienced too many things in his life. Whether it was experience or character, he respected him. Xiao Mingjin said with a smile, since Dao Master Z said so, then let's go back. Each of us can get 6 of the 24 level 2 vicious beasts' corpses. It's time to be satisfied. Miao Wentong said with some unwillingness, but we haven't gotten any precious ores yet. Didn't Dao Master Z say that there are precious ores on the nearby islands? Dao Master Z said, indeed. However, almsgiver Tang predicted that there were ferocious creatures on these 3 islands. Therefore, it's better to believe that it's true than not. Don't be a greedy person who's never satisfied. Go back. Miao Wentong did not want to be looked down upon and seen as a greedy person, so he said decisively. However, in his heart, he did not think much of it. Humans die for wealth, birds die for food. Seeking wealth amidst danger has always been a coexistence of danger and opportunity. 2 hours later, the corpses of the 24 white crocodiles were all sent back to the cargo ship by the 4 of them. After seeing the corpses of the white crocodiles, the sailors were shocked. However, Miao Wentong had ordered them to keep quiet and also promised them some benefits, so they acted as if they had seen nothing. After returning to Jingmen Island, Tan Xiu entrusted Miao Wentong to send the assigned white crocodiles' corpses to Star City's South Gate town. Then, he went alone to Jingmen Island's medicinal herbs market. On the way back to Jingmen Island from the South China Sea, he inquired about the situation of Jingmen Island's medicinal herbs market from Miao Wentong and the others, and the result made him very surprised. Nowadays, the famous mountains and rivers in the country had been seriously developed, and many precious herbs had been extinct. But Jingmen Island was different. Jingmen Island was located in the South China Sea, and there were many islands nearby. Many of the islands had not been visited for thousands of years. Once a large number of herbs were picked, they would be sent to Jingmen Island's medicinal herbs market. Therefore, the scale of Jingmen Island's medicinal herbs market was comparable to the imperial capital's medicinal herbs market and the demon capital's medicinal herbs market. Occasionally, there would be extremely precious herbs that would attract countless medicinal herbs merchants and big buyers. Neat and clean. This was Tan Xiu's first impression of Jingmen Island's medicinal herbs market. On both sides of the wide street, there were stalls, and behind each stall, there was a stall owner greeting the customers. Tan Xiu found that the entire medicinal herbs market was divided into 4 areas, A, B, C, and D. Area A and Area B belonged to the stall area. These 2 areas had 4 streets, and there were thousands of medicinal herbs stalls. Area C and Area D belonged to the store area. They also had 4 streets, and the number of stores was exactly 500. Tan Xiu still had 90 million yuan in his account. It seemed to be a huge amount, but if he wanted to buy a large number of precious herbs, it was pitifully small. A 1,000-year-old wild ginseng was already so expensive that it could make one's hair stand on end. Perhaps, the price of other precious medicinal herbs would not be much different. Therefore, Tan Xiu strolled around the stall area. Last time in Star City's medicinal herbs market, he had found an incomparably precious medicinal herb, blood spiral snail. This time, he wanted to buy a large number of medicinal herbs. On one hand, he needed to collect the medicinal herbs needed to concoct the golden bell liquid. On the other hand, he also needed to buy the medicinal herbs needed to concoct the spirit congealing pill. Whether it was the golden bell liquid or the spirit congealing pill, Tan Xiu knew that it would be very difficult to collect all the medicinal herbs. But, he could exchange them for other medicinal herbs with the same efficacy. "Little brother, are you here to buy medicinal herbs?" A bearded middle-aged man pushed a cart and stopped after seeing Tan Xiu and asked. "Yes," Tan Xiu said. The bearded middle-aged man said with a smile, "Little brother, do you want to buy a lot of medicinal herbs? If so, how about renting me as a porter? The rent is absolutely cheap." "Porter?" Tan Xiu asked, the confusion in his heart. After the middle-aged man's explanation, he understood that the porter was a person who rented a cart to help transport the medicinal herbs. He thought for a moment, nodded and asked, "What's the price?" The bearded middle-aged man was happy and quickly said, "If you only buy a cart of medicinal herbs, you only need 100 yuan for 2 hours and 200 yuan for 5 hours. If you want to buy more than a cart, I suggest you directly book it for a day, 500 yuan a day." Tan Xiu pondered for a moment and asked, "Are you familiar with this medicinal herbs market?" The bearded middle-aged man grinned and said, "Yes, I'm very familiar with it. I've been a porter here for 8 years. Which stall's medicinal herbs are good, which stall's medicinal herbs are bad, which store's medicinal herbs, and which store's medicinal herbs are genuine, I know them all. It seems that this is your first time coming to Jingmen Island's medicinal herbs market, right? I didn't explain it clearly. If you want me to be your porter, I also have the responsibility to be your guide and help you introduce the situation of the medicinal herbs market." Tan Xiu said, "I'll give you 1,000 yuan to be my porter for a day." "Double?" The bearded middle-aged man was overjoyed. His expression turned respectful as he said with a smile, "Little brother is a straightforward person. I, Zhao Dezhuang, will definitely make you feel that it's worth it. If you need any medicinal herbs, you can tell me and I'll take you there secretly." Tan Xiu shook his head and said, "Just follow me for a stroll first. If I can't buy the medicinal herbs I want, I'll let you take me to find them." "All right." The bearded middle-aged man happily agreed. 2 hours later, Tan Xiu had bought all the medicinal herbs needed to concoct the golden bell liquid. Moreover, he wanted 10 times the amount of each medicinal herb. The small cart pushed by the bearded middle-aged man was about to be filled to the brim. Huh. Tan Xiu had just completed the last transaction and was about to continue to buy the other medicinal herbs needed to concoct the spirit condensation pill. Suddenly, he found that a lot of people had gathered in the square between the stall area and the store area. Moreover, there were also a lot of people running there from all directions. The bearded middle-aged man followed Tan Xiu's line of sight. He immediately shook his head and said with a wry smile, "Mother is 100 years old, but I often think of her as 80. Mother is the greatest person in the world. How many times has it been?" "The 16th time." Tan Xiu was puzzled. "What do you mean?" The bearded middle-aged man said, 2 years ago, a pair of mother and daughter came to our medicinal herbs market. The mother was about 40 years old, and the daughter was 8 or 9 years old. That girl was suffering from a strange disease, and her body was suffering from pain all the time. In order to treat her daughter, the woman traveled to major cities in the country, looking for famous doctors everywhere. Unfortunately, she tried her best to find countless Western doctors and Chinese medicine doctors, but none of them could cure her daughter's strange disease. In the past 2 years, she brought her daughter to us. Every once in a while, she would set up an arena in the central square of the medicinal herbs market, and let all the famous doctors come to diagnose and treat her daughter. She also threatened that whoever could cure her daughter, she was willing to give all of her millions of family fortune. 2 years have passed. Not only did she not find a divine doctor to cure her daughter, but she also spent most of her millions of family fortune. It has been 2 months since the last time she set up an arena here. The last time she had hundreds of thousands of family fortune, and it is estimated that this time it will be less than the last time. Tan Xiu looked at the bearded middle-aged man in a daze, and a sour feeling surged in his heart. The thread in the hand of the loving mother was tightly sewing the clothes of the wanderer before he left, for fear of returning late. Mother. She was indeed the greatest person in the world. Tan Xiu had been in the immortal world for thousands of years, and the person he missed the most was his mother. The mother who held him in the palm of her hand and kept him in her mouth, afraid that he would melt. In a flash, his heart was moved with compassion. "Come with me to have a look." After saying that, Tan Xiu strode toward the square between the stall area and the shop area. A half-meter-high platform was temporarily set up in the center of the square, which was not very big. Several security personnel of the medicinal herbs market were maintaining order. A single bed was placed on the platform of more than 20 square meters, and a shivering little girl was curled up on the bed. Beside the bed was a middle-aged woman with a miserable expression on her face. She constantly glanced at the crowd around her with eyes full of expectation. "Everyone, I only have 300,000 left. I beg you, whoever can cure my daughter, I will give all the remaining money to him. The child is too young, she shouldn't bear so much pain. This is Jingmen Island's medicinal herbs market, there must be a lot of Chinese medicine doctors here, I beg you." Chapter 104. Chinese medicine was the quintessence of a country. It was inherited from 5,000 years of civilization and accumulated from generation to generation. And the medicinal herbs market in each city was the place where the divine doctors of Chinese medicine liked to live in seclusion. Mu Qingping firmly believed in this point. Therefore, while visiting famous doctors, she also took her daughter to the medicinal herbs market in each city and set up the arena, hoping to meet a divine doctor in the vast sea of people to cure her daughter's strange disease. As the saying goes, there will be brave men under the generous reward. Every time Mu Qingping came to the medicinal herbs market, the medicinal herbs market's management office would send someone to help her arrange the arena. Every time, there would be a lot of people climbing the arena to diagnose her daughter. Let me try. After Tan Xiu arrived, he squeezed to the front of the crowd and was ready to step on the platform. Let me go first. You're still young, don't join in the fun. Some money is not something you can get. In the crowd, a middle-aged man wearing a Chinese tunic coldly glanced at Tan Xiu and then stepped on the platform. Tan Xiu raised his brows and stood in the front of the crowd without fighting back. On the platform, Mu Qingping looked forward and respectfully asked, "What's your name?" "Chu. Chu Guoxiong." "Hello, Dr. Chu. Thank you for coming forward. Do you want to take a look at my daughter's medical records? There's a description of her various symptoms in the past few years." "Give it to me." Chu Guoxiong nodded and took the thick examination report. He carefully looked at it for a few minutes as his brows wrinkled into a Chuan character. He sat down in front of the single bed and grabbed the girl's wrist. Chinese medicine consultation: look, listen, question and feel the pulse. Chu Guoxiong pressed the girl's pulse for more than a minute. He shook his head with a wry smile and sighed, "Strange, it's really strange. I've been a doctor for decades and I've seen countless cases, but I've never encountered such a strange situation. Her body is too cold and her meridians are in disorder, slightly different from ordinary people's meridians. The most important thing is her meridians. Just now, when I checked her pulse, I touched the hand-woolly acupoint on her arm with my other hand. This is a big acupoint surrounded by several meridians. But when I touched it, she obviously felt a strong pain. This shows that the problem lies in her meridians and meridians." Saying that, he spread his hands and smiled bitterly again. "I don't know where to start. I can't treat him." Sigh. Mu Qingping deeply sighed, the bitter feeling in her heart was getting stronger. She looked forward to it again and again, only to be disappointed again and again. Her heart had been stimulated to the point of despair. The hundreds of onlookers shook their heads in disappointment. Among the hundreds of people, at least half of them had seen such a scene. Even a lot of people had seen Mu Qingping come here to set up an arena more than 10 times. They pitied the little girl. Like Mu Qingping, they also hoped that a divine doctor would appear to solve the child's physical pain. Chu Guoxiong looked at Mu Qingping's disappointed expression. He was silent for a moment before he slowly said, "Perhaps there is someone who can diagnose your daughter's strange illness. There is even a great possibility that he can cure her." Mu Qingping's eyes lit up and hurriedly asked, "Which divine doctor is it?" "My master, Gui Jianqiu," Chu Guoxiong said. Hua, everyone looked at Chu Guoxiong in shock, their eyes filled with disbelief. In the entire country, who had not heard of the famous divine doctor Gui Jianqiu? And this middle-aged man called Chu Guoxiong turned out to be Gui Jianqiu's disciple. As the saying goes, a famous teacher produces a brilliant disciple. Even if this Chu Guoxiong has no way to cure the little girl, but his medical skills must be very good. The successor of the divine doctor. Today is really a blessing of 3 lifetimes to be able to see the successor of the divine doctor. The divine doctor Gui Jianqiu hasn't appeared for nearly 20 years. Where is he now? The disciple of the divine doctor can't cure the little girl. I'm afraid there's no hope. We met a great god. Mu Qingping had heard the name of the divine doctor Gui Jianqiu countless times. But this time, a strong hope rose in her heart as she asked with expectation, "Dr. Chu, your master, where is he?" Chu Guoxiong forced a smile and said, "Actually, I don't know where my master is now. His whereabouts are erratic, and I haven't seen him for a full 4 years. However, my master will look for me once every 5 years. When I see my master again, I will naturally tell him about your situation. At that time, if he is willing to help, I will contact you." Mu Qingping hurriedly told Chu Guoxiong her contact information and thanked him again and again. Tan Xiu, who was standing in front of the crowd, was slightly moved when he saw Chu Guoxiong's diagnosis. Just as he was about to go to the platform and personally check the girl's body, a sarcastic remark came from the crowd, "What divine doctor's disciple? I think he's just a swindler." Gui Jianqiu is indeed a highly respected divine doctor. His medical skills and moral character are admirable. But the successor of the divine doctor can't even cure a little girl? Isn't this a joke? In an instant, all eyes were focused on the person who spoke. He was a white-haired old man with a goatee on his thin face. His triangular eyes were filled with sneers. His clothes were like the clothing of the 50s and 60s, with coarse cloth and a headscarf. The most important thing was the shoes on his feet, a pair of straw sandals made of hemp rope. "Who are you?" Chu Guoxiong's brows deeply wrinkled as he looked at the old man with hostility. The old man sneered and said, "You don't have the qualification to know who this old man is. Perhaps that old geezer Gui Jianqiu will know this old man when he comes." Chu Guoxiong's eyes narrowed. After a moment of silence, he cupped his hands and said, "I don't need to explain whether my master is the divine Dr. Gui Jianqiu or not. Since you look down on me and think that I'm incompetent, why don't you personally diagnose and treat this little girl? If you can cure her, it can be regarded as a great deed with boundless virtue." The old man arrogantly said, "Since this old man has come forward, I will naturally cure her." After saying that, he walked to the platform and came to the bedside and sat down. He examined the medical records, observed the body language, and felt the pulse. The old man was very skillful in the process of Chinese medicine consultation. The arrogant look on his face gradually turned solemn as time went by. When his fingers were removed from the girl's pulse, his whole face turned dark. "Mysterious ice veins, 1,000 needles body." The old man spat out these words with difficulty and silently got up. Mu Qingping's breathing once again became hurried. Although she couldn't understand the meaning of the old man's words, but she seemed to see a glimmer of hope as she hurriedly asked, "Old man, can you cure my daughter's strange illness?" With a touch of pity in his eyes, the old man shook his head and said, "Don't bother. She was born with the 1,000 needles body and the mysterious ice veins in her body. Besides, there's no time." Mu Qingping's complexion changed as she hurriedly asked, "Old man, what do you mean by this?" "My daughter, she..." The old man sighed, "I've read about this kind of physique in ancient Chinese medicine books. She should have started to fall ill in the last 2 or 3 years, right?" Mu Qingping's pupils contracted as she said, "Yes. More than 2 years ago. My daughter was originally fine, but her father had a car accident. I heard that she became seriously ill and had a high fever for 7 days. Then she became like this." The old man helplessly said, "If she was treated in those 7 days, there might be hope. But it's too late now. She can persist for more than 2 years under such pain. It's really a miracle. This child is very pitiful. The pain she endured is simply unimaginable to ordinary people. I think if it weren't for her extremely strong willpower, perhaps she would have already." Mu Qingping's tears burst out. How could she not know the pain? Her daughter was in so much pain every day that she fainted at least 10 times a day. But every 2 or 3 hours, she would wake up again and continue to endure the pain. Plop, Mu Qingping knelt in front of the old man. Her white teeth bit her lips, causing blood to ooze out. With a deep pleading tone, she cried, "Old man, please think of a way. As long as I can save my daughter, I'll do anything you want. As long as my daughter can be healthy, I'll give my life to you." The old man shook his head and said, "This old man can do it. Let alone me, even if Hua Tuo or Bien Ke were to be reborn, it would still be difficult to cure her. As for Gui Jianqiu, that old man is even worse. Listen to my advice, instead of letting her be immersed in pain every day, it's better to let her, alas." "Impossible!" Mu Qingping screamed. She suddenly crawled up from the ground. Her eyes were like a hungry wolf as she stared at the old man and shouted, "Absolutely impossible. My daughter can be cured. She can be cured. You're a liar. Get the hell out of here. Get the hell out of here. Her cries were like a cuckoo crying blood. Among the hundreds of onlookers, some soft-hearted people had already begun to wipe their tears. They were distressed for the little child and were also infected by Mu Qingping's heart-wrenching cries. Is it my turn now? Tan Xiao strode to the platform as he coldly looked at Chu Guoxiong and the old man and spoke indifferently. Chu Guoxiong originally wanted to ridicule the arrogant and despotic old man, but Mu Qingping's appearance made him sad and gave up the idea of ridiculing him. However, when he saw Tan Xiao again and heard Tan Xiao's words, anger rose from the bottom of his heart as he angrily shouted, "What the hell is wrong with you? Don't you understand my words? That money is the child's life-saving money, it's not something you can touch. You're so young, how can you be so greedy? Aren't you afraid that you can't cure this child and will make a fool of yourself here?" Tan Xiao indifferently said, "So, if I cure her, the one who will make a fool of yourself will be you?" Chu Guoxiong was stunned for a moment before he immediately ridiculed, "Relying on you? You can cure her? Are you kidding me? If you can cure this child, I'll change my surname to yours. I'm willing to kneel down and worship you as my master. I don't want a cheap son, nor do I need a cheap apprentice. Please excuse me." Chapter 105. Tan Xiao was the kind of person who would respect others 10 times if they respected him. If others bullied him, he would also bully them. He didn't care about Chu Guoxiong's identity. Let alone a divine doctor's descendant, even if he was the emperor of heaven, he wouldn't give him any face. Pushing Chu Guoxiong aside, Tan Xiao directly sat on the chair in front of the bed. "Young man, don't be too arrogant." The old man looked at Tan Xiao's cold appearance and coldly said. One must know that he had just said in public that even Hua Tuo and Bian Ke couldn't cure the little girl's strange illness. Tan Xiao was young, but he didn't believe his words, which made him lose face. Tan Xiao didn't turn his head and said, "Compared to Hua Tuo and Bian Ke, I'm still a bit worse. I remember very clearly who was the one who talked nonsense just now, but the result was that he couldn't cure others." The old man was furious, but seeing Tan Xiao's hand on the little girl's pulse, he immediately suppressed his anger and disdainfully said, "Good, good, good. Since you want to humiliate yourself, I'll wait to see your disgraceful appearance." Mu Qingping was in despair at this moment. Her hysterical roar was to vent her emotions. At this moment, her mood had improved, but looking at Tan Xiao's young appearance, she didn't have the slightest hope. Furthermore, upon hearing Chu Guoxiong and the old man's ridicule toward Tan Xiao, the kind-hearted her hesitated for a moment before she bitterly said, "Little brother, thank you for your kindness, but let's forget about it." Tan Xiao didn't answer. At this moment, his attention was completely focused on the little girl. Although the little girl was still unconscious at the moment, Tan Xiao could sense the condition of her body through her pulse. "My guess is right." After a moment, Tan Xiao released the little girl's wrist and turned to look at Mu Qingping, saying, "If you believe me, buy a few medicinal herbs in 10 minutes. Mu Qingping was stunned and confused. "Buy medicinal herbs for what?" Tan Xiao said, "To save her." Mu Qingping asked incredulously, "Can you cure my daughter?" Tan Xiao calmly said, "If you were to ask someone else, I'm afraid their answer would be that they are powerless. But coincidentally, I can cure it. Now, I just want to know, do you believe me?" "I believe you." Even if Mu Qingping had doubts in her heart, she still resolutely replied. She was in despair now, but Tan Xiao's words were like a life-saving straw for her. No matter what Tan Xiao ordered, she was willing to do it. Very soon, Tan Xiao wrote down the names of 4 medicinal herbs on the paper. These 4 medicinal herbs were very common, but they had to be at least 100 years old. They even had to be wild medicinal herbs. After handing the prescription to Mu Qingping, he took out a bank card and handed it to her, saying, "The price of these 4 medicinal herbs is very high. Your 300,000 yuan is far from enough." I have enough money in this card to buy 4 kinds of medicinal herbs. The password is on the back of the card. I'll wait for you here. Mu Qingping hesitated. She never liked other people's charity. Not only was Tan Xiu willing to cure her daughter, but he also gave her the money to buy the medicinal herbs. This made her somewhat at a loss. Take it. Tan Xiu shouted in a low voice. Mu Qingping's body trembled. Looking at Tan Xiu's serious expression, she finally steeled her heart and took the bank card, saying, "Little brother, I can't thank you enough. Regardless of whether you can cure my daughter or not, I, Mu Qingping, will remember this kindness in my heart." After saying that, she went to buy the medicinal herbs. Under the high platform, an old man in his 50s said with a clear voice, "Little brother has a noble character and unquestionable integrity. This old man really admires you. In this medicinal herbs market, if my 100 medicine hall is the first in scale, no one dares to say that they are second. There are many kinds of medicinal herbs. If little brother trusts me, why don't you give me the prescription? I'll give you 4 kinds of medicinal herbs for free." Tan Xiu was slightly surprised as he looked at the old man. After pondering for a moment, he slowly asked, "The world is bustling for benefits, the world is bustling for benefits. I rarely show kindness, but this time I was moved by this mother's mother, so I decided to save her. You're a businessman, pursuing benefits. I want to ask you, what's your purpose? Or, what's your condition?" Clap, 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 the old man applauded and said with a smile, "Sure enough, heroes come from the youth. Your mind is sharp, and your intelligence is outstanding. This old man admires you. You're right, I'm a businessman, pursuing benefits is a matter of course. But this time, I'm not only pursuing benefits, but also reputation. If you can cure the patient's illness, I'll have a part of the credit, and I can also let the world know about my 100 medicine hall's deeds. In addition, since you said your condition, then I'll mention one. If the patient is cured, I'll give you the medicinal herbs. If you can't cure the patient, you must pay for the 4 kinds of medicinal herbs. How about it?" Tan Xiu deeply looked at the old man. He suddenly grinned and said, "It's said that old people become shrewd, and it's really true. You want to use today's matter to advertise your 100 medicine hall. I promise you. But, I also have a condition." The old man was confused. "You also have a condition? Tell me." Tan Xiu said, "Her illness is very difficult to cure. 4 kinds of medicinal herbs can't completely cure her. If you can take out a 500 years old wild ginseng, I'm sure I can completely cure her. Of course, as you said, if I can cure her, you'll give me the wild ginseng. If I can't cure her, I'll buy it at 10 times the market price. Do you agree to this condition?" The old man hesitated. A 500 years old wild ginseng was worth 8 digits. If Tan Xiu really cured the patient, wouldn't the price he had to pay be too big? What should he do? The old man wearing straw sandals at the side sneered. He looked at the 100 medicine hall's boss and said, "Since you can't make a decision, then I'll help you. If he can cure the patient, I'll pay for the 500 years old wild ginseng. If he can't cure her, I'll pay half of the price." "Good." The old man was overjoyed and happily agreed. Tan Xiu coldly glanced at the old man wearing straw sandals and secretly sneered. For others, the little girl was indeed suffering from a strange illness. But for him, it was not the case at all. After checking her pulse, he already knew the little girl's physique, twin meridian ice phoenix sacred body. If a child with such a physique appeared in the immortal world, the supremes of the immortal world would definitely scramble to accept her as their disciple. There was a legend in the immortal world that hundreds of thousands of years ago, a woman with twin meridian ice phoenix sacred body appeared. Relying on her supreme physique, she not only became the overlord of the immortal world, but also broke the shackles of the immortals and ascended to the god world. Therefore, the little girl was not suffering from a strange illness. If he wanted to cure her, he only needed to teach her a suitable cultivation technique and help her embark on the path of cultivation. All the root causes could be easily solved. The reason why he gave her these 4 kinds of medicinal herbs was for 2 purposes. First, he could not expose the matter of immortal cultivation in order to deceive people. Second, the 4 kinds of medicinal herbs were used to improve and strengthen the little girl's physique. As for the 500 years old wild ginseng, it was completely Tan Xiu's intention to loot a burning house. He needed a ginseng that was old enough for his cultivation. Such a good opportunity, if he didn't use it, it would be a waste. 10 minutes later. The 100 Medicine Hall's staff sent the 5 kinds of medicinal herbs and even sent the pot for decocting the medicine. Can you decoct medicine? Tan Xiu looked at Mu Qingping and asked. Mu Qingping nodded and said, yes, I have decocted Chinese medicine for my daughter many times in the past 2 years. Tan Xiu said, saving a person is like fighting a fire, so decocting the medicine here. Go get 3 bowls of water and then put the 4 kinds of medicinal herbs in the medicine pot in the order I said, except for the ginseng. All right. Mu Qingping quickly complied. The crowd of onlookers was getting more and more, and the number would soon exceed 500. They had been paying attention to the development of this matter. Seeing that Tan Xiu wanted Mu Qingping to decoct the medicine, they suddenly discussed in private, are you serious? What kind of sacred being is this young man? He actually dared to let the girl's mother decoct medicine in public. Doesn't he know that once the Chinese medicine he prescribed has no effect, his true colors will be revealed and he will be reviled by everyone? He really doesn't know life from death. Even the personal disciple of the divine Dr. Gui Jianqiu and the mysterious old man couldn't cure this strange disease. Can this young man cure it? The older the Chinese medicine practitioner, the more powerful he is. He hasn't even grown his hair yet. Is he deliberately trying to impress the crowd? This young man is somewhat reckless. If his treatment fails, he will have to pay a huge sum of money. I don't know the price of the 4 kinds of medicinal herbs, but I clearly know that the price of the 500 years old wild ginseng is 15 million yuan in the 100 Medicine Hall. 10 times the compensation, that's a total of 150 million yuan. The greater the hope, the greater the disappointment. That Mu Qingping has set up more than 10 arenas in our Jingmen Island's medicinal herbs market, but no one has been able to cure her daughter. How much weight can this young boy have? He's just putting on an act. Let's wait for a good show. Tan Xiu didn't care about the comments of the crowd. Judging people by their appearance was human nature. Now that those people looked down on him, he would let them know how wrong they were. Time flew by. The 4 kinds of medicinal herbs were put into the medicine pot in order. Soon, there was only half a bowl of water left. Tan Xiu calculated the time. When he felt that it was almost time, he ordered Mu Qingping to bring it out. Little brother, my daughter is still in a coma, how can she drink the medicine? Mu Qingping nervously looked at Tan Xiu and asked. The surrounding people, including Chu Guoxiong and the old man wearing straw sandals, all showed a gloating expression. The patient was in a coma, there was no way for her to drink the medicine. They wanted to see what Tan Xiu would do. Easy. Tan Xiu sat at the head of the bed and reached out to hold the little girl in his arms. His fingers gently poked a few acupoints on the little girl's body and gently pinched her Rinzhong acupoint. Ah, under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the little girl's eyelashes trembled a few times before she opened her eyes. Even her knitted brows, even though she was in a coma, slowly relaxed. Chapter 106. The silent crowd, as if a stone was thrown into the calm water, suddenly boiled up. Everyone looked at the little girl who just woke up with an incredulous expression. She woke up. Mu Qingping's pupils contracted, her eyes burst with a look of ecstasy. She had visited famous doctors all over the years, but every time her daughter was in a coma, even those powerful Chinese medicine doctors could not wake her up. The first time. This was the first time someone could wake her daughter up when she was in a coma. At this moment, Mu Qingping seemed to see hope, the hope of her daughter's recovery. Behind the crowd, a beautiful figure appeared. Ouyang Lulu was wearing leather boots, a trench coat, and a pair of pink sunglasses. Her curious eyes swept over Tan Xiu on the high platform. "Hello, can I ask what happened?" Ouyang Lulu gently touched the young man beside her whose face was filled with amazement and asked in a low voice. The young man frowned and an impatient look appeared on his face. But when he turned his head and saw Ouyang Lulu, his expression stagnated. His expression changed faster than turning a page of a book. The impatient look on his face instantly disappeared and was replaced by a somewhat flattered look. Then, he explained the cause and effect of the matter to Ouyang Lulu in an orderly manner. Until the end, he still felt like he hadn't fully expressed himself. Treatment? Ouyang Lulu incredulously looked at Tan Xiu. She knew that Tan Xiu was a cultivator and Tan Xiu was very good at gambling, but she never dreamed that Tan Xiu was also a Chinese medicine doctor. Suddenly, she had an illusion that the longer she knew Tan Xiu, the more she felt that Tan Xiu was unfathomable. Even she herself did not know why she suddenly had a trust in Tan Xiu. Although the Chinese medicine Tan Xiu prescribed had not been taken by the patient, she still did not know whether it could be cured or not. However, the appearance of that trust was absurd. On the high platform, Chu Guoxiong looked at Tan Xiu in shock. He had examined the little girl's body before, so he was very clear about her condition. Even if he was skilled in medicine, he wasn't confident that he could wake her up. However, Tan Xiu did it in front of him. This made him secretly mutter in his heart, "Will the traditional Chinese medicine this guy prescribed really work? If it worked, then he would have lost all his face today." The old man wearing straw sandals also looked at Tan Xiu with an astonished expression. Although he was confident that he could wake up the unconscious little girl, he would need to spend some effort to do it. It was impossible for him to do it as easily as Tan Xiu did. "This kid does have some ability." The old man praised in his heart, but on the surface, he said calmly, "Little guy, I really don't believe that the traditional Chinese medicine you prescribed can cure the patient." Tan Xiu said, "Whether you believe it or not is your business, but whether I can do it or not is my business. Although you're old, I'll let you know today that you've been living like a dog all these years." After saying that, Tan Xiu took the half bowl of traditional Chinese medicine and gently blew it. He lowered his head to look at the little girl in his arms and calmly said, "Your mother is very worried and distressed about you. If you don't want to make her sad, drink this bowl of traditional Chinese medicine. I promise you that after you drink this bowl of traditional Chinese medicine, your body won't hurt anymore." "Big brother, is this true?" The little girl blinked her big, watery eyes and asked with a face full of anticipation. "It's true." Tan Xiu nodded heavily. The little girl looked at Tan Xiu and looked up at her mother, Mu Qingping. Then, she carefully took the bowl and gently blew it. After finding that the traditional Chinese medicine was not too hot, she gulped it down. Hot, after drinking half a bowl of traditional Chinese medicine, her small face quickly turned red, and then she cried out while clutching her stomach. She felt that a raging fire suddenly rose in her stomach. This raging fire was about to burn her internal organs. Mu Qingping was anxious and hurriedly grabbed her daughter's hand. She looked at Tan Xiu and hurriedly asked, "Little brother, what's wrong with my daughter?" "That medicine." With a calm expression, Tan Xiu said, "There's no problem with the medicine. The burning sensation is normal. That half bowl of traditional Chinese medicine is hot. You can't feel it when you drink it, but when you drink it into your stomach, you'll feel a raging fire burning inside your body. Don't worry. It's good for her, there's no harm. I can guarantee that in a few minutes, she won't feel the pain anymore." Mu Qingping was a bit relieved. In order to encourage her daughter, she followed Tan Xiu's words and said, "Baby, bear it. This divine doctor said that you'll be cured soon. You won't have to endure the pain every day. By the way, don't you want to go back to school? Don't you want to read and study like a normal person? When your illness is completely cured, I'll send you back to school." Big drops of tears gushed out from the little girl's eyes. Although she was suffering from severe pain every day, the burning pain in her stomach still made her want to die immediately. However, she was struggling to hold on, because she knew that she couldn't die. Her father had died, and if she died, her mother would live alone in this world. If that happened, she would be very pitiful. Persist. Persist. The little girl cheered herself up in her heart. 2 minutes later. The little girl's face was covered with sweat, and her shiny black hair was emitting white smoke. Her scrawny body trembled even more violently. Tan Xiu looked at the little girl's almost ferocious face and secretly admired her. He knew the pain after taking traditional Chinese medicine. When he was in the immortal world, he was also forced to take this kind of traditional Chinese medicine by his elders. However, the medicinal herbs used were older, and the efficacy was more overbearing. It's almost time. Tan Xiu gently picked up the little girl, let her feet step on the bed, and then grabbed her shoulders with both of his hands. He began to use a strange technique, constantly kneading her shoulders, arms, chest, back, waist, buttocks, legs, and feet. Every time he kneaded, the little girl screamed. Tan Xiu's hands were getting faster and faster. When he kneaded every joint and every meridian in the little girl's body, a smile appeared on his face, and he gently loosened his hands. Ah! The little girl stood alone, and a surprised look appeared in her eyes. As the last wave of pain subsided, she was surprised to find that every part of her body was no longer in pain. On the contrary, she felt an indescribable comfort all over her body. She hadn't felt this kind of feeling for more than 2 years. Mu Qingping looked at her daughter standing on the bed and asked with a face full of expectation, "Baby, how do you feel now? Does your body still hurt badly?" The little girl gratefully looked at Tan Xiu, and then jumped up and threw herself into Mu Qingping's arms. Tears flowed out again as she sobbed, "Mom, it doesn't hurt anymore. And it's very comfortable, really comfortable." Mu Qingping's expression froze. She was tongue-tied as she listened to her daughter's words, as if she was dreaming. It doesn't hurt anymore. Her daughter hadn't said this sentence for more than 2 years. Chu Guoxiong took a step forward. His eyes stared at the little girl and said, "Child, you said you don't hurt anymore. Don't tell me you deliberately said that to reassure your mother." The little girl turned to look at Chu Guoxiong and said, "Uncle, my body really doesn't hurt anymore. My mother taught me since childhood that liars are not good children." Chu Guoxiong looked at Tan Xiu in disbelief. He desperately swallowed his saliva and said again, "Child, Uncle is also a Chinese medicine doctor. Can you let Uncle check your pulse?" "All right." The little girl raised her arm. Chu Guoxiong's fingers pressed the little girl's pulse and directly closed his eyes. After a full 2 minutes, he opened his eyes and released the little girl's pulse. Even a fool could see the shocked expression on his face. "How is this possible? How is this possible?" Chu Guoxiong unconsciously murmured as if he couldn't believe this result. After he re-diagnosed the little girl, he was shocked to find that the situation inside the little girl's body was very different. Her pulse was much more stable, the cold air in her body had become sparse, and her meridians were much clearer. He even found a warm flow of air in the little girl's meridians for a long time without dispersing. Half a bowl of Chinese medicine. This result, suddenly, the moment he regained consciousness, he felt a burning sensation on his face, as if he had been slapped a few times. What did it mean to look down on people like a snob? Today, he could be said to have vividly displayed this sentence. He understood that today, he was not the only one who made a fool of himself. He had also implicated his master, Gue Jianqiu. Regret. It was like a poisonous snake was biting his heart. If there was a medicine for regret in this world, he would be willing to buy it even if he had to go bankrupt. The old man wearing straw sandals looked at the ashamed look on Chu Guoxiong's face, and a bad premonition arose in his heart. He strode forward, regardless of whether the little girl was willing or not, and directly grabbed her pulse. After the diagnosis, his complexion turned the color of a pig's liver. "You! How did you do it? The old man's lips squirmed, looking as if he had seen a ghost. Tan Xiu casually said, "This kind of minor illness is very easy for me." Puff, the old man opened his mouth and spurted out a mouthful of blood. What was the most hurtful thing in the world? It wasn't the sharp knife, but the careless expression and the careless words he spoke. Especially at the moment when he used his powerful strength, it was not the human body that was hurt, but the human heart. In an instant, the old man seemed to have aged several years. He took a few deep breaths to suppress the grievance in his heart. He raised his hand to wipe the blood on the corner of his mouth, looked at the 100 Herb Hall's boss and said, "I'll send the money for that ginseng to your shop now." After saying that, he left with his tail between his legs. He was afraid that if he stayed any longer, he would be called a quack by others. Today, he had lost his old face, but he did not lose his reputation. That was because he had not reported his name from the beginning to the end. Otherwise, once today's matter was spread, he would become a laughing stock in the Chinese medicine circle. Even his old friends would gossip about him behind his back. "Senior, you haven't reported your name yet. I think I'm qualified to know your name, right?" Tan Xiu looked at the old man's back and said, "You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure."